Hello, dear viewers. Support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it. And also, make sure you comment your thoughts. Now let's start the video.
Fury had been to the island before, but usually it was on an occasion with many people, during late afternoons and evenings. Now it was midday and his heavy black leather would not work. "Where's my room?" he asked Harry. Harry pointed. "That building, just walk in and take the first room that appears." "What floor?" Fury asked, looking at the double-story building. "Doesn't matter. All the rooms have privacy and appear a couple of floors up, with 360-degree views of the island and sea." Harry informed him. "The rooms also stay as long as you are on the island. It's like a registration thing. Once you walk in, the building creates your own rooms. Once you leave, it disappears. That way I don't have to clean up behind people." "It's a room of requirement?" Fury asked. "No, while we do have one on the island, the guest house is enchanted differently," Harry said. Fury nodded and walked off to go look at his lodgings and find something else to wear. Harry led Natasha to the room. "I have a surprise for you," he said. "Is it that Fury will leave us alone for the next 2 days while we get reacquainted?" Natasha asked with a saucy smirk. "I don't know, possibly," Harry said as he walked to the entrance for the room. "Observe," he said as he paced in front of it. When the door appeared, Harry opened it and called, "Would the staff please present themselves for duty?" An older gentleman dressed as a butler stepped out of the door and stopped in front of Harry. Behind him followed 20 other people, all dressed for different positions. The older gentleman with the bored face stepped forward once everyone was assembled and waiting. "Your staff is ready to serve, master." "Good. I will give the chef the menu for tonight along with the ingredients in just a short bit. We have one guest at the moment who's staying in the guest house. He will have every luxury he could ask for. Have the bartender make us some cocktails and send out the masseuses for myself and the lady," Harry said as he took a stunned-looking Natasha by the arm and turned around. "We will be in the pool area," he called back. "Of course, sir," the apparent head butler said as he started giving out orders. "Did you just turn the room into our own private person factory?" Natasha asked, looking behind her to see as more people came out carrying massage tables and oils. Following 2 female, Swedish-looking, athletically built masseuses, they looked professional too. "I just had an idea to expand the radius that the room could extend its reach. It could always make constructs, so why not use them? They can't go very far yet. They reach to just a bit beyond the houses as it stands. I intend to extend that reach further, like to the greenhouses, for example," Harry said with a smile. Natasha's smile was radiant. "You've seen the potential in what we originally thought was a mistake and turned it into an asset," she exclaimed. "Yes. And now we have room service," Harry said with a smile. "But first, let's get rid of that tension. I am fortunate to have experienced a massage by a very talented young lady, who I met once on a mission. Her name was Nadia, and the girls following behind us, having been made by my subconscious, should have similar skills." Natasha was still considering the options made possible by Harry's latest invention, when there was the sound of exclamation from down the beach. They looked up to see Fury marching up to them. "Why are there maids here that try to help me get dressed?" Natasha laughed. "You did tell the man to have Fury afforded every luxury he could ask for." Harry signed before turning to Fury. "Sorry about that. As for these people, they are all part of the room of requirement. I found a way to have it extend its reach, and now we have staff," he explained simply. "These are all constructs?" Fury asked, looking at the men carrying the massage tables and the masseuses leading them. "We are, sir," the maid that had followed him said. "Please let us be of service." Fury scowled for a second before he nodded at the maid. "This could be useful. Please send a masseuse to my room too, along with a bottle of fire whiskey," he said as he turned around and walked away. "This is one of your best ones yet, Harry," he called over his shoulder. "My room at the agency better be able to do this too." Harry and Natasha looked after the man for a moment before shrugging and going to lie down on the massage tables. An hour later, they were so relaxed, they didn't want to get up but decided to go for a soak in the hot springs anyway. The staff had been working out fantastically. Their drinks were refilled without them needing to ask, and when Harry didn't go to the chef brought a portable station out to Harry. Harry summoned the required ingredients for a couple of meals for Natasha, himself and Fury, and then sat back as the chef prepared the meal exactly as he would have, magic included. A maid showed up to take Fury's meal to his room, where he had apparently decided to spend the rest of the day, probably just enjoying a drink and the view of the ocean. They didn't mind. The meal turned out just as good as if Harry made it, and they followed it up with some ice cream from Harry's soft-serve machine. Harry had not noticed how tired he had been until he woke up, in the middle of the night, still lying in the hammock with Natasha, where they had been watching the ocean while listening to the music from the bar. Harry summoned something to cover them and went back to sleep. Harry and Natasha spent the first 2 days in relaxing pastimes, except for when he remembered the soldier was still in an enclosure and went to deal with him as well. It didn't take long, and he subdued the man and put him with the rest in stasis. He had, just in case, confined the arm in solid marble, which he conjured with enough magic to last a month. They ate, slept, and unwound as they chatted about things that had not been mentioned in their limited time together over the last 3 months. Harry had decided to go get Coulson and his team on the third day when relaxing stopped feeling like an urgent mission. On the morning of the third day, Harry informed Natasha that the nymphs had still not given up hope that he would spend more time with them. He had told them that he would make the decision with Natasha when she came back. What that meant, though, was that he had hoped that she'd make the decision for him. He didn't mind hanging out with the beautiful wood nymphs, but he would not do it if Natasha wasn't on board with it. She had slapped him on the arm and demanded that he open a portal for them to come join them by the pool. He had shrugged and opened the portal. Natasha stepped through and came back with all the nymphs in tow a couple of minutes later. "Good morning, Lord Potter." Zira was the first to say. "We are so happy that you have chosen to spend some time with us today." "We're just hanging out, right?" Harry asked. Zira looked at Natasha, who said, "Spend time like friends." Zira then nodded. "Of course, we have been made aware that physical acts of intimacy is considered taboo when someone is already in another relationship." She said, "While it does not make sense to us, we can accept it as it is your culture we are adjusting to." She seemed to huff, honestly. "You should have just said so," she said as she pouted. "We could have been much closer friends by now if you'd just taken the time to explain your point of view. Even us nymphs sometimes don't share." Okay, you've made your point. Sorry that I didn't explain my worries properly." Harry said. "Who are all these women?" Harry heard Fury say as he walked up from the bar with a tropical drink in hand. "More constructs." Harry looked around from his deck chair. "No. These are the nymphs of New Atlantis," he said. The nymphs all seemed to get some sort of thrill at being described as such and started hugging each other and clapping hands. Zira explained with a genuine smile and a tear in her eye, "New Atlantis is your land. If we are the nymphs of New Atlantis, that means we are your nymphs. You do not share our customs or history, but you have made us very happy by claiming us like this." "I'm happy for you, Zira," Natasha said. She had spent some time with Zira in the past and had started to understand a bit of their drive. They didn't want to be property like when they were being captured and sold, but they did want to belong, and for that they needed to be claimed or accepted. "What's going on here?" Fury asked in confusion. Zira decided to introduce herself. She walked up to him and gave the startled man a hug. "Good morning, I am Zira. I am the leader of the nymphs of New Atlantis." "You are a friend of our lord's?" Fury stood ramrod straight until she let go. Hi, I'm Nick Fury, please call me Fury," he said, extending a hand for her to shake. She took his hand and shook. "It is a genuine pleasure to meet another one of Lord Harry's friends," she said. The other nymphs gathered around and waved happily while looking at the man curiously. Zira saw the glass he was holding and asked, "What is that?" Fury looked at his glass and then Harry, who shrugged, then replied, "It's a tropical fruit drink with coconut rum." Zira looked at it and asked, "Does it taste nice?" Harry instantly got up before the nymph ruined Fury's calm. "Let's go get you girls some fruit juice. I don't know how your bodies would react to alcohol," he said as he led Zira to the bar where a bartender was waiting for anyone to serve. "We have had alcohol before, you know," Zira said. When Harry looked at her strangely, she continued, "Wine is not uncommon where we come from." "Oh," Harry said, "and you can have it without fear of alcohol poisoning or damaging your tree or something." Zira smiled at him indulgently. "We could probably handle as much as those from Vanaheim, which, if I'm not mistaken, is more than humans can." "Fair enough," Harry said as he looked up at the bartender. "I'll have a Bahama Mama for each of the ladies, please." "Of course, sir," the bartender said. "Okay, I'll be by the pool. This man will make you your drinks and hand them to you. Don't be shocked at how cold it is, it's meant to be served that way," Harry said as he turned around and headed back to his deck chair where his own crushed ice-infused drink was waiting. "Are these new arrivals?" Fury asked from his own chair where he was looking at the nymphs. "They've got a grove up by the enclosures, but they will start spending more time around here. Just let us know if you feel an unnatural desire to follow one of them around," Natasha said. When Fury looked at her in question, she explained, "They have a supernatural ability to seduce men. Part of the agreement for them to come here is that they keep their allure in check around us or our guests. They sometimes struggle to keep it under control." "Is this like what that Asgardian woman was doing which Coulson reported about?" Fury asked, looking back at them as if assessing them. "Kind of," Harry put in. "Nymphs do it naturally though and start off having no control over it. According to Coulson, that Asgardian woman was doing it on purpose and wanted to control people. The nymphs just want a safe place to belong." When he noticed Fury's calculating look, he said, "No, they are not assets, they are the last of their people. The rest were hunted down and sold into slavery. We cannot afford to play with their future like that." "Just them?" Fury asked. "What happened to the males of their species?" "They have no males in their species. Any children they have are always nymphs, so always female." Natasha said. "When you said sold into slavery," Fury started. "Yes," Harry said, "but we don't talk about it. My vision gets kind of red around the edges when I think about it. Let me know if you ever end up acting on that impulse. I'll set you up with an alibi," Fury stated. Harry thought about it for a moment but shook his head. Better not to go down that rabbit hole. "It won't fix the past. I'm looking out for the future." It was then that the sounds of moaning reached their ears. "Damn, I forgot about the syrup in the Bahama Mamas." He chastised himself. "What's going on now?" Fury asked, looking back at the nymphs. Natasha chuckled. "Nymphs have a unique reaction to sweets." Just then Zira reappeared. "This is better than wine," she said, holding the glass in her hands like it was a precious treasure. The others soon rejoined them and sat down around them on the ground and with their feet in the water, enjoying their drinks. They were giggling and slowly enjoying the drinks while basking in the sun. Every now and then one of them would brush a hand against Harry and act like it was an accident, only to giggle and continue what she was doing. "Why are they hanging around you rather than the bar if they're enjoying it so much?" Fury asked. "Harry's magic is like the sun to them." Natasha said, "This is the first time we've given them permission to hang around. We're hoping that they get enough before Coulson and his team arrives," she said. Then she looked at him. "How are you doing? No desire to run off with one of them, I hope?" "I don't seem to be supernaturally affected if that's what you mean," Fury replied, "and that's probably a good idea. I don't want to know how they would react to all of this," he said while indicating the lounging girls in minimalistic attire. A short while later, the drinks were completely consumed and the giggling stopped. Harry did not offer them more drinks. Hopefully they had had enough. It was not the end of their scandalous behavior though. No sooner were the drinks finished than they started getting in the water. Harry diverted his eyes when he saw the white cloth becoming translucent. Natasha smirked at him. "I'll sort them out before next time," she whispered. "They really have no shame, do they?" Harry asked. "No, they don't," Natasha said as she looked at them swim. It took her a moment to realize Harry was looking at her scandalously. "Oh, I'm sorry, they are distracting. How are you not watching them?" "It's not that I don't want to, you know," Harry groused. Once they were all in the water, Zira asked, "How is even the water filled with your magic, Harry?" "I made this pool with magic. The way the water is brought here from its source is magic. It's kept clean with my magic and it's heated and cooled with my magic." At this point, "It should be pretty magical," Harry said. Fury had gone quiet and Harry looked over at him. He saw his face had gone blank, like he was controlling his emotions. "Are you okay, Fury? Are you being affected?" he asked. "Not supernaturally," he said as he looked away from the sight, "but it is pretty distracting." "Good enough for a holiday getaway," Harry joked. "I can't honestly say I've ever laid down on a deck chair on a private beach next to a bar tended by a construct. Watching a pool filled with frolicking nymphs, this is a first." He took a sip of his drink. "Not a bad way to spend a holiday, honestly." Then he lay back and closed his eyes, or he seemed to. With that eye patch, chances were he wasn't missing a moment. Harry chuckled and followed his example, laying back, closing his eyes and enjoying the moment while listening to the girls laugh and play. Natasha, next to him, lay back as well and took his hand in hers. "Strange though this is, it's also calming and refreshing to have them around," she said. "I know what you mean. They aren't shameless as much as they are innocent, I think. I can get used to this atmosphere as long as they stay away from the sweets. Nobody would believe them innocent when they heard that." Harry said, "I haven't seen them this happy since they arrived." Natasha noted, peeking at them for a moment. "Your influence is definitely improving their quality of life. Did you notice the island's plant life seems to be flourishing?" Harry asked. "I was going to ask about that. Did they drain all the nutrients out of the island already, or is Logan just running around madly trying to keep up?" Natasha asked back. "I'm not certain how, but the ground seems as fertile as ever." Harry said, "That's because I learned my lesson that day in the greenhouse." Zira's voice was suddenly next to Harry. "We have been focusing on the life cycles on the island after a couple of discussions with Master Logan. He has been giving us basic instruction on fertilizer and how things grow best. As it is in our natures, we can feel these things but didn't necessarily understand them. We have made some progress in helping the plants along without straining the land." Harry looked over to her but quickly diverted his eyes again. "That's wonderful news, Zira. I'm glad you've been able to find something to do around here. Hank and Bruce also helped us understand some of the plants in your greenhouses which were foreign to us. Your magic running through them helped. We were able to help increase your crops and nurture the fields for the next season as well," Zira said. Lady Sif helped us understand the needs of the creatures in your care, and introduced us to those who can communicate. The unicorns also seem to follow us around when we're out taking care of your lands. That's probably because they feel your connection to the island. Harry guessed. The land that supports and sustains them now has caretakers that are in tune with it. They probably just want to make sure you are always accompanied. Unicorns are more intelligent than people seem to think. That's not what you told me, Natasha said with a bit of curiosity in her voice. I'm almost certain they are smart enough to know how amazing you are, Harry replied unrepentantly as he squeezed her hand for a moment. Nice save, Natasha replied with a smile. They heard a soft snore from next to them and realized Fury must have fallen asleep. Not wanting to interrupt, they continued chatting quietly for a while. Natasha informed Zira about the need for proper swimwear next time and the fact that they would be receiving guests soon. They were by no means required to stay away, but it would be best if they avoided sweets and wearing clothes that became transparent when wet, especially when guests were around. Natasha would be helping them look for outfits later. After lunch, Harry sighed. He'd enjoyed the downtime. I think it's time I go get Cowlson. Probably a good idea to check up on Hill as well, Fury put in. I would have thought she'd be in contact already. Okay, you try and call her and I'll go get Cowlson while Natasha sorts out the nymphs. Something tells me our guests will meet them one way or the other, Harry said as he got up. The nymphs had yet to leave the pool area and seemed to be making themselves at home. Fortunately, they had stuck to drinking wine. Though Zira had taken a couple of sneaky sips of Harry and Natasha's drinks while she thought they wouldn't notice. Her moan of pleasure gave her away every time, but Harry and Natasha let her indulge a bit so long as all of them didn't do it. Giving orders already, Fury raised an eyebrow, asking a friend. Harry replied easily before donning his armor and popping away. Are you friends? Natasha asked. If you knew how many times Marauder's Den was the only place I could sleep and actually rest without interruption, you'd understand why I do consider him a friend. Not to mention the Ghost Squad, the work he did, and the fire whiskey. I'd be stupid not to. Fury scoffed as he took out his mirror. Harry arrived at the location he was told to meet Cowlson. There was the sound of a pop and he looked over to see a device pointing at his designated drop site. It was one of the same devices Tony had once lost trying to measure his magic. Harry smirked. He should have known Cowlson's scientifically inclined friends would not be able to resist. The next moment there was the sound of running feet as Fitz sprinted around a corner and came to a stop in front of the smoking machine with his hands in his hair. Oh, come on. Didn't Cowlson warn you? Harry asked. Well, yes, but I thought, Fitz started. You thought EMF shielding would help? Harry asked. It was the first thing Tony had tried. Fitz nodded. You think like Stark. You'd get along if what Cowlson's told me about you is true, Harry said as he walked up to the machine. Sorry about your toy. Toy? This thing costs more than I make in a year, Fitz complained. I'll ask Stark if he's got any spares lying about, Harry offered. He popped a couple trying to do the same thing and he tends to buy in bulk. Fitz just nodded dumbly, thinking that he might be able to repair it and learn a bit more that way. Where are the rest? Harry asked. We're here, Cowlson said as he led his team into the hangar. I was just rounding up some chairs for the demonstration, he said, pointing over his shoulder as one of his men carried a couple of chairs. But we've got a guest here you might want to talk to first. He looked over his shoulder. Agent Hand, if you'd please join us. Confirm with me the moment everything is settled in there. I'm meeting with someone who might be able to offer support right now, so I have to go. A woman stepped through a door, talking on a cell phone. She was dressed in a professional pantsuit, had dark hair with red highlights, and her walking pace seemed to indicate that she was a busy woman with way too much to do. When she reached them, she extended her hand at Harry and said, Hello, my name is Victoria Hand. I hear we have you to thank for stopping this mess before it got a chance to do any real damage. Harry took her hand and shook it. I had some help, he said. Well, thank you for whatever you did and coming to pick up the trash. Any chance I'll get to see those bastards punished? Hand asked with a flash of anger crossing her face. As I told you, they are in suspended animation. Once we have sorted out a plan for the future, we'll put someone in charge of the detention facility and start getting them through trial. Harry said, probably better to leave them as they are. Cowlson said. When Han looked at him strangely, he explained. Some of these agents are experts at escaping confinement. We do not want to send them to some prison where they can escape. Sending a bunch of them in together would be asking for a mass breakout. What about you? Hand asked Harry. Got any tech or powers that can make it an inescapable prison? Harry thought about it for a moment. It is possible, but I'd have to put some thought into how. He said, that's not what you wanted to talk about though. No, it's not. Hand confirmed, accepting the change of subject. What's this I hear of a new agency, one that can't be infiltrated? Harry looked at Cowlson. We were seeing a bunch of people with growing trust issues worrying about the future. I thought I'd give them some hope. Weren't you planning on giving all current SHIELD staff the option to come work for EPI? Coulson explained. I was hoping to not be personally involved with recruitment. That will be up to Hill and Fury. Harry said, I'd heard they were your first recruits. That's why I decided to talk to you. I want in. I've also got most of the personnel here at the hub convinced to come with me. Han said, we've seen you in action, and with your latest achievement of stopping a 70-year-old plot by Hydra of all organizations, while nobody even saw you coming with intel you got that SHIELD apparently didn't have access to, who in their right mind would not want to join an organization with those kinds of resources. Like I said, why speak to me? I'm sure you will be well placed by Hill. She's head of HR after all. Harry said, you don't understand. I want in at the top. The people here at the hub will follow me, but not if there's a council hanging over our heads making decisions like New York. Hand explained, I think I see the issue. Harry nodded. Pierce was bad for business and damaged trust everywhere. He'd already handled that part. But he couldn't tell that to her without having assured her loyalty to the cause. You'll need to make a call to anyone that might need you in the next couple of hours. You're going to have to come with us if you want that kind of unrestricted access. I've got a couple of people who will be really lonely with me out of eyesight. Han said, pointing at the two armed guards who had unobtrusively entered and stood by the door watching them closely. If you want them there, they can be, but they are signing contracts and stowing the weapons. We don't normally allow weapons on the island. If you have them, they are hidden for people's ease of mind. Harry said. Han looked over at her men and indicated for them to come closer. When they arrived, she said, we're going on a field trip, no visible weapons. The guards looked at each other and left to return the semi-automatic weapons they carried to the armory while Han made a quick couple of calls. Harry lifted his arm and activated his mirror. Director Fury. He said, and waited for Fury to answer. This better be important. I was shot, you know. Fury answered in his usual grumpy manner. I'm calling to let you know that Victoria Hand will be joining us when we come by just now. She wants to be division head of the hub, where I'm told she's already recruited most of the SHIELD staff to transfer to EPI. Harry informed him. Coulson's been putting out fires, I see. Fury nodded. Okay, I'll be ready at the bar in 10 minutes. Do me a favor and go collect Hill. She's been inundated with requests to transfer. She's still at SHIELD HQ. What do you mean still? Harry asked. Fury smirked. She never left. After she approached the first person to ask if they'd be interested in transferring, word got around and she's been working around the clock. But it's been 3 days. You can't mean she's been awake that entire time. What about the people? Are they just standing around? Harry asked incredulously. Believe it or not, she's apparently been assigning people to do a host of things for her, some of which we can discuss when you're back here. She did seem a little tired though. Maybe you can help her with that when you go get her. Fury asked. Harry chuckled. He'd not even officially hired anyone, and it seemed he was already in charge of a large and efficient group of people. Sure thing, see you in a bit. Harry broke the connection and looked up at the people watching him. Fitz was the first to speak. How does that device work? It seemed like it had a full range of vision. Is it some kind of three-dimensional rendering with a layered display? If so, how does it have so many focal points too? Whoa there, Agent Fitz, you can ask your questions later. First though, I have to go fetch my overworked head of HR. As he said it, he smirked and lifted a hand at Fitz. Want to come with? Fitz shook his head. But Skye instantly grabbed onto the hand. Yes, please, she exclaimed. Harry was shocked, but only for a moment. You are hoping to get more information before I tell you the answer, aren't you? Maybe, Skye answered. I've already left my tech in my bunk on the plane. If I take you with and show you too many things, that reward is no longer on the table, you know that, right? Harry asked. That's not a problem, I've already figured it out. Skye said. Do tell, Harry said as he apparated them to his landing spot at the Triskelion. Skye grabbed her stomach and held it there for a moment before relaxing. That was definitely different, at least I didn't hurl. Harry gave her a moment to get herself in order, and then she looked up. You're an alien, your powers are too varied. You have a spaceship in orbit somewhere that's doing things for you while you make it look like superpowers. Is that your final answer? Harry asked. Of course, I'm right, why would I change my answer? She said confidently. Okay, if that's what you think, Harry said as he turned around and walked to where he felt the largest amount of magic. Hill always had her bag and mirror with her after all. Wait, aren't you going to tell me I'm right? Skye said as she followed him. Why would I? Harry joked back and continued walking until he came to a large office. There were people sitting in chairs in what looked like a waiting area, and at least 4 people in front of computers, 2 of which were on phones. While they typed away, the moment Harry rounded the corner, one of the people noticed, tapped their co-worker on the shoulder and pointed him out. Mr. Ghost, said co-worker exclaimed, causing everyone to look up. Are you here to see Miss Hill? I am, Harry replied. One moment please, she asked and tapped something on her computer before pressing a button on what looked like an intercom and whispered something into it. Please see him in. Hill's voice replied at a normal volume. The secretary got up and walked up to Harry before holding out a hand to shake his. Miss Hill will see you immediately. After Harry shook her hand, she continued as she led them to the door. I just want to say thank you for what you did. None of us would be here if you hadn't. Captain America and Widow was there as well. They did just as much as I did, probably more. Harry argued. The secretary just smiled indulgently. Of course, sir, she said. Harry didn't think she believed him. She opened the door for him and let both of them through after looking at Skye strangely as she followed him in. Ghost, it's good to see you. Who's your friend? She's one of Coulson's people. Harry replied. She decided to come with me when I decided to come pick you up. As he said it, he walked up to her and handed her a vial. She looked at it for only a second before popping the top and downing the pepper-up potion. Skye jumped and almost screamed when steam shot out of Hill's ears, but Harry silenced her. We don't want all those people out there running in here with guns, do we? Harry asked. Skye shook her head and Harry canceled the silencing. A much more energetic Hill looked at Harry and said, I can't leave, there's too much to be done. Are you telling me you'd rather not have the job? Harry asked. Of course not, was Hill's indignant response. Then get your things together. You're coming to the island and then getting some rest. You've got people out there who can change your appointments for you. Harry said, I can't just leave them here to handle everything. Hill said, then make sure you bring your cell phone so you can apologize. We're having a staff meeting on the island and it will last at least 2 days. Harry said before looking at her sternly. If the head of human resources can't see when someone's not taking care of themselves, I don't think she's in the right position. He threatened. Okay. Fine, she finally relented. She picked up her bag and a couple of things from the desk and walked to the door of her office. I'm leaving for a couple of days. Could you handle my calls and reschedule things in my absence? Yes, ma'am. One of her secretaries actually saluted with a smile. We've been worried about you overworking yourself before we even see the new agency. Well, thank the boss here for dragging me away to rest, she said, pointing at Harry. Apparently I'm supposed to take time to sleep and recover now. How will things get done if I'm sleeping every day? Most people do that, ma'am. It's considered healthy. The same man smirked. It's good to know we'll have Ghost at the top. Fury's at the top. Harry corrected. I'm just the one with the resources. Same thing, sir, the man said, still smiling. Harry led his 2 companions around the corner and apparated them to the others at the hub. When they appeared, Fitz jumped from the pop and then looked at Skye, who was handling the jump much better this time. You do get used to it, she said. Agent Hill, came Hand's greeting. Good to see you. Agent Hand, Hill greeted back. Okay, please sit down. For this part of the demonstration, Harry went through the demonstration of the contracts, delighting at the shock that showed on most of the faces. Coulson and Hill just smirked, having already seen it. Then Harry presented the island contract. Why does this thing say any knowledge learned on or about the island or its inhabitants will be forfeit? Simmons asked, apparently reading faster than Fitz, who was inspecting the paper as if expecting to see circuitry. How do you think we can guarantee the safety of the new agency? Harry countered. The way Ghost described it to me, people will be given clearance based on what contracts are active on them. That way if someone on a project goes AWOL, gets captured or deserts, they will forget what shouldn't get out. Coulson explained. If you try to come into the agency under false pretenses, you'll be found in violation of the contract immediately and will know. But how? Fitz asked. You must sign to find out. Harry said he was shocked when Skye handed him the contract back almost instantly. Come on people, sign or leave. I want to know what he's protecting on that island, she said excitedly. Hand was the next person to sign, followed by her 2 guards. Then Triplet, May and finally Fitz and Simmons also signed. Why aren't they signing? Hand asked, indicating Coulson and Hill. I've been signed into his secrets for 1.5 years, Hill said. Coulson's been in on his secrets for what, almost 2 years now? More like 2.5, Coulson corrected. I was actually the first person to ever sign one besides Ghost. The demonstration, Hand asked, and Coulson nodded. Harry looked over the contracts and nodded before making them disappear. He waved his hand, casting some privacy spells just in case there were any cameras in the hangar, and said, I am also an inhabitant of the island, so my secrets are also covered. I have just made this immediate area private. Any tech you want to bring will be able to come with this particular form of travel, so please feel free to go get them. Skye seemed to perk up before running off to her bunk. Everyone else walked. When everyone else was back, Harry asked, that everyone? When everyone just looked at him, he lifted a hand and pointed off to the side, pinky and pointer extended. Then he turned his hand and everyone watched as a portal was formed in front of their eyes. Step on through to New Atlantis, he said as he stepped through himself. He waited on the other side as Coulson and Hill immediately followed. Then Hand and her 2 bodyguards, and then Skye, May and Triplet. Then nobody. Harry waited another couple of seconds before sticking his head through and seeing the two scientists inspecting the portal rather than go through. Sighing, he summoned them through the portal and closed it, leaving them in a heap on the sand. Simmons pushed Fitz off of her before getting up and dusting herself off. That was not very nice. We were just inspecting the event horizon to see how it interacted with the surrounding matter. Harry looked off into the sky when he felt something, then smiled. It seemed Fury had decided to make a dramatic entrance. He quickly dismissed his armor and stood there in his standard beach attire. Once again, welcome to New Atlantis, home to a refuge for magical creatures and plants. I am your host, Harry Potter, sometimes referred to as Ghost, he said before starting to point things out. This is my pool, that's my bar, and here comes my fiancé with your boss. As he pointed into the sky, the guests saw two hippogriffs flying down towards them. Hand's guards almost pulled their guns, but Hand had the forethought to hold a hand out indicating for them to not draw their weapons. The magnificent animals landed close by and trotted towards them. Harry saw that Fury was back in his black clothes and decided to take pity on the man by casting a cooling charm on him. Fury only looked at him for a second in thanks, not breaking his Banff image before dismounting and walking up to them. Natasha also dismounted and her mount took off again as she gave Harry a hug and a kiss. Agent Hand, good of you to join us, Fury said, holding out a hand. Director Fury, Hand said, shaking the offered hand. Her guards saluted and stood back. This is highly irregular, was all she said as she indicated the animal. Said animal suddenly lifted its head and pawed at the ground angrily. Don't insult a hippogriff, Fury warned. They don't take crap from anyone. Hand held up her hands and quickly backed up. I meant no offense. The creature stopped pawing at the ground and calmed instantly. Harry walked up to him and scratched at his neck. Charlie is actually quite fond of people, but hippogriffs don't understand sarcasm or certain turns of phrase. So be straightforward when you interact with them. Fury turned around and patted the animal. Thanks for the ride, Charlie. Then he walked off to the bar where the bartender was pouring a drink for him already. Harry looked up and saw Coulson and Natasha leading Hill, Hand, and her men to the bar area. He saw Skye just staring at the animal with awe. Do you want to say hi? He asked. Skye nodded her head and made to approach, but Harry said stop quickly and she complied. Before you can approach a hippogriff, you must first bow to it. It shows him that you respect him. If he bows back, you may approach. Skye looked at Harry for a second but then straightened and bowed to the animal. When he bowed back, she sprouted a smile and slowly approached the magnificent animal. Harry showed her how to scratch it and then surprised her by magically lifting her on and tapping Charlie on the behind. Charlie started running and took off. Shouldn't you warn the creature before depositing people on his back? May asked. The scientists looked like they wanted to ask their own questions. Triplet was still just staring after the animal. He had been very quiet since he found out his mentor was with Hydra. He was quickly getting over it though. Charlie is usually the one to take people for their first flight. He'd simply leave if he didn't want to take people for a fly. Harry responded with a shrug. A couple of minutes later they landed and Skye jumped off before hugging the creature around the neck. Thank you, that was amazing. Charlie puffed out its chest in pride and looked to the others. May actually walked closer and bowed very elegantly. When Charlie bowed back, she approached and scratched it like Harry had shown Skye. You're good with him. Harry said, I've always liked animals, never seen one as magnificent as this one though. May replied as she stroked his plumage. Do you want to take him for a fly? Harry asked. That does seem like the thing to do, doesn't it? She asked. Before stepping to the creature's middle and mounting it with relative ease. Pretty soon Charlie was in the air again with May leaning forward and pointing things out to the creature. It surprised Harry when Charlie complied and flew her closer to the things she pointed out. A couple of minutes later they landed and she thanked Charlie for the ride as well. When she approached them, Triplet followed the same process, bowing to the hippogriff. Soon he was taken for his own flight. You have unicorns on the island, May said. We do. Harry confirmed as he started walking to the bar too, where Fury, Hand, and Hill were deep in discussion, seemingly lost to the world. Hand was drinking a glass of water, but Hill was drinking a butterbeer. She seldom had the opportunity. Harry led them to the other side of the bar and switched the music on with a wave, just loud enough so that the two groups could not hear each other clearly. He informed the bartender to pour some beer for Hand's agents. They first refused, until it was explained that it could not make them drunk. He had the rest of the team order something to drink and then sat back. Okay, ask your questions. What are you? How does the contract work? Where are we? What was that creature? How did you make that portal? Skye started. Harry took a sip of his fire whiskey and blew out a gout of flame. What is it that you're drinking? She finished. Let's see, Harry started. I'm a wizard, magic, New Atlantis, a hippogriff, magic, and fire whiskey, respectively, I think. You're telling us that magical creatures exist and that you're a magician? Fitz asked. I use magic, not stage tricks. I'm a wizard, not a magician. Harry said indignantly. It does explain Potter Innovations' success with worldwide relief efforts. May said with a straight face. You know what, Agent Melinda May, I like you. You're a straight shooter. For that you get one free spell whenever you want it. Harry said with a smile. He was being honest too. She had not once questioned him either. She simply accepted what was going on, and her instant connection with Charlie told him she was a good person. Lucky, Sky complained. Why does she get a free spell? Why don't we ask her? I suspect she knows. Harry said, looking at May. Was it because of Charlie? May asked. Partially. Harry said, you're also just so damn cool. Sky looked between Harry and May with astonishment. And I'm not. You're cool too, but you got your free spell already. Harry said. What when? She protested. Let's just forget that time I saved your life and go with today when you almost screamed when Agent Hill drank a pepper-up potion. I had to silence you before you had all those people outside rush in, guns drawn. Harry said, that was magic, damn I missed it. Sky whined. And here I hoped I'd see lights or hear a chant or something. I don't usually need incantations. I got over the need for that years ago. Unless it's a large and intricate spell like when I make enchanted items. Harry said. As for the lights, magic sometimes has a visual aspect, but most of the time that would be only because the spell needs it or that's its purpose. Strangely, most attack magic also has a visual aspect. Maybe the spells were designed that way. Harry pondered aloud as he cast a light spell which shone from his fingertip. Sky exclaimed. I am human even if I come from another reality. Harry said, don't you mean dimension? Fitz asked. No, I mean reality. Harry stated. Shortly after arriving in this world, I was made aware of the fact that there are other dimensions and I don't come from any of them. Where did you hear that? Simmons asked. I'm not at liberty to reveal that. Harry said. Hold on, Sky said. You're literally the boss's boss and there's stuff you can't tell us even with magical contracts that enforce our silence. It has to do with keeping you safe. The moment you learn some things, they can affect you greatly. Harry said. I'm not refusing because I'm being mysterious. There's some things even I wish I didn't know, like the hell dimensions. Did you know they existed? Hell, Fitz scoffed. You're religious too? No, but my one friend Kurt Wagner is. Harry said. The so-called teleporting mutant, I've heard of him. Nightcrawler, right? Fitz asked. First off, I don't like that word. I call them enhanced. Secondly, it turns out he doesn't so much teleport as pass into another dimension and then reappear in ours. Because of the difference in the fundamental rules that governs the space dimension in both dimensions, he can manipulate his re-entry destination to a degree. Harry said, or that's what I've been told. Apparently he goes through one of those hell dimensions. After that sobering thought, Fitz thought of something. So you say Tony Stark has been looking into how your magic works? Oh, we figured that out ages ago. Harry scoffed, and, Fitz asked, that information is above your pay grade. Tony himself only barely made the cut to know. Harry said, what did make him feel better was when he learned that even magic had rules and limitations. He held his hand above the counter and conjured a red rose. He then picked it up and handed it to Natasha. Harry conjured this. When something is conjured, it forces the magic to emulate the particles that make up the rose. He has to remember everything he can to make it as lifelike as possible. If he forgot that it's supposed to smell like a rose, it won't. The magic then maintains the form as long as it can. The more magic he puts into the conjuration, the longer it will last because it takes longer to dissipate more energy. Natasha explained. Harry had once used the same example. So is magic a particle or some sort of energy? Simmons asked. Magic is like light, where it can be described as both a particle and a wave at the same time. Harry said, I had a genius for a friend back in my world. She did a lot of research into how magic works. Her dream was to make it available to non-magical people. Harry said with a soft smile, her parents weren't magical, you see. Where is she now? Sky asked, having noticed the sad smile. Everybody from my old reality is dead. Harry said, we had a power-hungry dark wizard who set the governments of my world to fighting each other. One nuke was all it took. Mutually assured destruction took care of the rest. There was silence until Natasha spoke. That's why Harry is working so hard to create a better world. His old magical government wouldn't let him help people using magic. Here there is no such thing, so he does what he wants, and he wants to help. Imagine a world with free water, power, and communications. Harry started. The distribution centers. Sky exclaimed. Of course that's magic. But wait, I thought you said magic breaks technology. Unless you have MI tech. Natasha said and took out her phone, holding it out to Harry, who levitated it above his hand using magic. The outside is normal plastic and glass, but every circuit and chip is protected by Stark Industries and Potter Innovations' Magic Immune Technology, or MI Tech. My phone will work after taking a direct blast from an EMP, and radiation glides off it. I can apparate with Harry with no fear that I'll need a new phone. Apparate. Is that the teleportation thing? Simmons asked. That's one of them. There's also portkey. Those are item-based transport. Harry made them for the Avengers and certain people in the know. Natasha held up her arm and showed the Avengers bracelet. I say the correct command phrase while touching it and I'm teleported to Avengers Manor, or here, or S.H.I.E.L.D. Avengers Manor, there's a place where the Avengers hang out and stuff. Skye asked excitedly. Sure, it used to be my house. And then Bruce moved in, and then Natasha, and then everybody got a room. Only most of the team have other homes. Sif is often off-world with Thor or Bruce or Logan. Thor stays in Asgard. Hawkeye has other places to be. I tend to spend most of my time here and do my research and experimenting in my workshop. Harry said, workshop is the name of a hidden location where he can experiment without fear of hurting innocents. Natasha clarified, it's not here on the island. What kind of research? Simmons asked. As you've probably figured out, magic has many fields of study. Harry is a master enchanter, which means charms and effects that he can make permanent in objects or with commands and intent. He's also very good at many of the other arts. Thought enchanting is his passion. This entire island is 10 times bigger than it used to be because he made it that way. Natasha bragged. Did you teleport sand from the bottom of the ocean or something? Fitz asked. Space expansion charms. Harry replied, go check out your rooms in the guest house and see for yourself, he said while pointing the building out. A door will appear for all of you. If it was already there when you walk in, it's already someone else's. To remember your room, mark it with permanent marker. When you leave the island, it will disappear anyway, so you don't have to worry about damaging the property. There was a rush as the scientists and Skye ran to the building, with May following after them but more sedately. Harry clicked his fingers and the bored-looking older butler seemed to appear from thin air. You called? He asked. Yes, please send some maids to the guest house to supply our guests with whatever they need. Harry asked, of course. The butler said as he disappeared. Did you make a change? Natasha asked. I thought having them appear as necessary would be better, so I reconfigured the room. Harry replied, Potter. He heard from the other side of the table and saw Fury beckon him. He smiled and got up. Fury would always think of himself as the boss. Probably part of what made him a Banff. How can I help? He asked as he arrived. You can pull up a chair and talk business for a bit. Fury told him. Hand has expressed an interest in a leadership position. As you know, we have agreed to work things as originally planned. I especially enjoyed hearing that the council has been turned into a committee that has only the power to make suggestions. Han said with a satisfied smile. Hearing how you did it was just the cherry on top. While doing the work for us at the UN, yes. Fury nodded. That was a good way to handle them, but now we need to discuss your plans. What do you have in place and what do you plan going forward? Their discussion lasted a couple of hours before Harry dismissed Hill to a room in the guest house. He escorted Han back to the hub with her guards. Han assured him she'd leave the extras behind next time after Fury explained how secure the island was. She did, however, extract a promise for vacation time on the island for senior staff, managers and team leaders in the off-seasons. Harry had joked about there being no off-seasons as it was basically summer all year long on the resort, if not the entire island. Leo Fitz and Gemma Simmons had never run out of questions, and Gemma had latched onto the idea of unicorns when she realized May had not been joking. Since then she'd been inquiring about all the magical creatures. The biologist in her was itching to explore and see the creatures. Natasha had had to promise to have Harry show them the creatures the next day. At some point Skye had decided to go for a walk, and Natasha had to take a broom to go stop her before she reached the limits of the room's influence. Her swimsuit was provided by one of the maids after all. If she had gone much further, she'd have been in a very embarrassing situation. The broom, of course, led to more questions about magic and requests to go for flights. Natasha had been explaining the process as well as she could while Harry and Fury chatted. Skye had run into her room to get dressed so that Natasha could take her for a flight, and May had been right behind her. After May's flight, she had come to Harry and pointed at the broom. I want one of those. You sure? Harry asked. That would be your one wish. He joked. Technically he'd promised her a spell, not an entire series of enchantments that could take hours. But her instant support of the broom had him smiling. I'm sure, she said. Okay, I'll have it made for you by tomorrow. Harry promised. He'd had an idea he wanted to try anyway. I'll be waiting. May replied before getting herself another drink and going back to the others. After that, Harry turned back to Fury and created a miniature illusion of what he already had created for the headquarters of EPI. Then he walked him through the levels, indicating what was there and what he had planned. "If you want, I can tell you where it is," Harry offered. "No, I'd rather nobody ever know the true location of the building. It serves the dual purpose of nobody being able to tell where it is and keeping that Heimdall guy from watching us. I can only imagine how the government of whatever country the building is based in would react if they realized they have an international instant transport hub based out of their country." Fury smirked. "I can't wait for ours to figure it out. They will try to come knocking, only unable to find out where." Harry smirked at the idea as well. "That does sound like it might be fun. We just need the other parts in place first. Once we start out, there's no going back. People will know we're here and will start requesting help. There will also be demands from the UN. Any idea how we'll handle those?" "The UN will have no power over us as we are affiliated with no one country. We are an international entity. Earth is our country now. Once you and Stark crack space travel, maybe we should put a base on the moon. Then we'll tell them that's where we're based out of just to mess with them." Fury smirked at the thought. Harry actually liked the idea more and more every time he thought about it. "What about our emblem? S.H.I.E.L.D. had an eagle. I was thinking a hippogriff. It continues the tradition set by S.H.I.E.L.D. but has a magical spin to it." "Why not a phoenix then?" Fury countered. "The symbolism is right. Reborn from the ashes of the fallen predecessor." "Fox," Harry wondered, knowing that saying it would bring the phoenix to him. When Fox appeared, Harry scratched his head. "What do you think of becoming a symbol for hope?" Fox trilled and Harry responded, "I know, but this will be much bigger. We're starting an agency to help the world and Fury thinks a phoenix would make the best impression." Fox looked at the one-eyed man and chirped before disappearing and reappearing on his shoulder. "I think he likes the idea. Better not let anyone see him like that though," Natasha said as she walked back to them from the others who had started relaxing by the water. "I can already hear the pirate jokes." May and Coulson had joined their conversation for a bit but had retired to their rooms. Coulson had taken a bottle of fire whiskey and Harry suspected they were sitting on one of their balconies enjoying night air, the sounds of the waves and a drink. When the time came for bed, Harry went to the workshop to go fetch something he had intended to enchant for a while now and brought it back to his house. He and Natasha said goodnight the way they normally did, and Harry almost fell asleep until Natasha reminded him he had a promise to keep. He wasn't happy about getting up, but once he started tinkering, time just started flying by. Before he knew it, morning had come and he quickly went to his trunk to get some sleep in a new hidden location, where he could use his time turner without fear of being discovered. 6 turns later he had a decent night's rest and could even set an alarm to go home and wake up next to Natasha. When Natasha stirred, Harry was just about ready to wake up anyway and decided to join her for her morning workout. They got dressed for exercise and stepped out to see May and Sky doing some sort of slow martial art form with Sky following May's movements. "Good morning," Harry said as they approached. "Morning," Sky said sleepily. May kept silent as she continued her form. She wanted to work out but there was no gym equipment so she decided to come do some Tai Chi forms instead. "Apparently it's good for balance and concentration," she said as she continued to follow May's movements. "Want to join? We're about to go train in the dojo with our sensei. I suppose we could join for a bit," Harry said, only to notice May had stopped moving. "Or you could join us." May dropped her arms and turned to them. "Where is this dojo? Are we teleporting to Japan or something?" She said it with serious curiosity. "Harry made us a place here on the island. You'll love it," Natasha said as she turned and led them to the room. Harry stopped just before they reached the room and let Natasha walk up and down where the door would appear. "What is she?" Sky started, but she never got to finish as the door appeared. "What the?" Harry smirked and bowed with a flourish, gesturing to the door. "Welcome to the room of requirement." As Natasha opened the door, Sky asked, "What's a room of requirement?" Natasha replied when she realized they didn't have time for a long discussion. "Holodeck." Sky stopped on the spot and looked like she was going to have some sort of fangirl attack. She ran in before Natasha could stop her, who hid a smile when Sensei appeared and knocked her on her ass with the same warning he had given her all that time ago. No shoes. May had stopped in the door and was looking on in shock. "We do not allow an audience in this dojo. Enter and participate or leave," the old man said. "That sounds familiar," Harry said as his clothes changed after he left his shoes by the door. Sensei turned to Harry and pointed. "You will have my personal instruction today after I have graded the newcomers," he said with a wicked smile. "Of course, Sensei," Harry responded crisply and took his position at the side of the mat. Natasha smirked at him from next to him, then waited for the others to be graded. Sky stepped up first, having taken her shoes off and wanting to kick the old man's ass for dropping her. "I'm going to hurt you for earlier," she threatened. The old man said nothing and took a combat stance. "Begin," he said. Sky unleashed with a kick first and was quickly dropped to the floor again by a hip toss. She tried punching next and was blocked. It carried on for a couple of minutes until Sensei called for a halt. Her clothing changed to a gi and she was given an orange belt, having been in training for a while now. Mei stepped up next and bowed respectfully to Sensei. He bowed back and signaled for her to start. Soon the punches and kicks were flying, and a couple of minutes later Sensei called for a stop. Her clothes changed to a gi with a black belt with 3 dan, just like Natasha. Harry was impressed. Here was a woman that might just be just as deadly as his own girl. Sensei started them off on forms and warm-up exercises, and then the other instructors appeared for personal sparring. As promised, Harry was paired with Sensei and he was bruised all over by the end of the session. When he bowed to Sensei, the man said, "You will never progress if you do not maintain your health. Sleep is important to balance, and balance is life." "Yes, Sensei." Harry responded with another bow, looking over to Natasha. She must have noticed him not getting in bed till late. Her look confirmed it. When they left the dojo and Harry started pacing for the door to the servants' quarters, Mei asked, "Where does Sensei go when the dojo disappears?" "Back into my subconscious." Natasha said, "The room of requirement can make anything, and I mean anything. So long as you can imagine it, it can be real. When Harry first showed me the room, I wanted a good place to train. The dojo appeared, but with it came Sensei." "So you can imagine someone with more skill than yourself and they will appear?" Mei asked. "He's technically got the same skills as I can imagine, but he's faster and more trained, as if he's dedicated his life to the art. The way I understand it, I will never reach his level, since as I become stronger, so does he." Natasha explained. Mei was silent for a moment. "That is very useful. EPI will have one of these for every branch," Harry informed her. Mei just smiled. "Are we doing this again tomorrow?" she asked. "Natasha does this every day. I tend to do it 2 or 3 times a week." Harry said, "Do you want to join tomorrow?" Natasha asked. "Please," Mei said, and then looked at Sky. "She'll join too." "What? Why?" Sky exclaimed. "Because you need the exercise. I can see you benefiting from the instruction of an instructor that uses different tactics." Mei explained, "But I'll still be sore tomorrow," Sky said as she pointed to where she was developing a bruise on her middle ribs. Harry stepped to her and held a hand over the bruise. It quickly faded. "How's that?" he asked, ignoring her blush. She started, putting a hand over the spot and feeling it before her eyes widened and she looked down. "It's gone." She looked up at Harry and blushed again. "Thanks," she said softly. "Any other bruises?" he asked. No." Her hand made its way to her bruised behind. No way would she tell him about that. She'd probably freak if he held his hand anywhere near. She banished the thought. Then she turned and started making her way to the guest house. "We're going to the hot spring if you're interested. It's enchanted to help heal sore muscles and relax a person," Natasha called after her. Sky stopped and looked back. "Swimming costume." Natasha answered her unasked question and she nodded before continuing to the guest house. When everybody was clean and ready, breakfast was served and Harry excused himself to go work on the project he had started earlier that day while Natasha handled the tour. He had done it enough, with her attending for her to know the creatures. When they returned, Harry was sitting at the bar playing with a pack of exploding snap cards. He had just finished his latest project. "Hey Mei, I have that item you requested," he said. Mei quickly walked over to him and looked at the broom lying next to him on the counter. "No, that one is mine." Harry shook his head and got up. "Follow me," he said as he led her back to his house, where a garage magically appeared out of thin air. "Added the extension last night. It's only temporary though." Harry noted everyone had followed, including Fury. Before opening the door, he looked Melinda May in the eyes and said, "I need to explain something to you first." He took a breath and then started. "When people started coming to the island, I started making flying brooms for them. I couldn't give them all the speed I'm capable of providing, because there has never really been a person with sufficient skill not to kill themselves at multiple times the speed of sound. You know how to work a plane, and more importantly, you have a firm grasp on friction, wind, turbulence, and everything that goes into sustained flight. You also seem to accept magic and never question the need to keep it secret. When I make someone a flying broom, I have to have them leave it on the island, since I can't afford to take chances. Fury told me that he trusts you and that you are one of his best agents, so I've designed something new with you in mind. Something you can take off the island and explain without mentioning magic once," Harry said as he reached for the door. "I give you your very own and first of its kind Skyline Special." He opened the door with a flourish, presenting a sleek, streamlined motorcycle. What you're looking at is the PI Special Order, one-of-a-kind, wind-resistant flying motorcycle. Harry said. There were dropped jaws everywhere as they looked at the machine. It wasn't so much the fact that it was big, so much as it was that it was smooth, futuristic-looking, and all shiny and black, with green highlights, a high window with fairing that seemed to be designed to completely remove the person on the bike from the airflow, and an engraved design on the tank, with the letters PI and the word Skyline in cursive script and a Chinese dragon curved around the words. It was animated to move and curl around the words. The symbolism of a wingless dragon which still flew, seeming very apt to Harry. May was standing there open-mouthed until she got her emotions under control. Can I take her out for a spin? Harry smirked and said, there is one caveat, if I don't take my girl out on this first, I'll never ever live it down. Harry had noticed Natasha's look. There was a tinge of envy he had never seen. She wanted to get on this bike. She wanted to own it. May seemed to struggle as her fists clenched, but then she nodded. She said nothing as she just stepped back with visual effort. Harry saw her jaw clench. When Harry had opened the door, Melinda looked and saw the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. It looked like something that was designed in a dream that one forgot, but felt regret at not remembering the next day. When he said it was hers, her heart may just have skipped an actual beat, so shocked and excited was she. The Skyline was a work of art, and it called to her. She needed to get on it, to feel its power between her legs. She asked if she could take it for a spin, and Harry broke her heart. She was a trained professional, and she could control her emotions, even while something in her screamed that it wasn't right. This was her bike, her baby. She should be the one to ride it first, to connect with her, for it was definitely a her. She was too beautiful to be anything but. Natasha noted May's distress, and she realized that Harry had just taken a gift and tarnished it all for her. He saw her desire for the machine and chose her over giving the gift to its rightful recipient. She took a breath and approached Harry. Then she hugged him and whispered, "It's not right, you gave it to her and now you are making her wait." Then she looked him in the eyes. "Take her for a spin, show her the features, let her learn how to use it." Then her eyes got a new light to them. "But when you come back, you're not getting in our bed again until I have my own Skyline. That beast wants to be ridden, and I want to tame my own." She finished with a hungry look and kissed him passionately before breaking away. Harry looked after her and then smiled. "I should probably listen to my future wife, huh?" There were nods all around. "Okay, May, let's take her for a spin," Harry said as he indicated for her to mount the bike first. "You want me to be the driver?" May asked, nodding at Natasha in thanks. She would have to thank her properly later. "This bike is special. She'll be bonded to you like no other magical device can be. This was something I had been planning for a long time and invested quite a bit of magic into. It is a prototype of intent-based flight magic. It's basically something that hasn't existed before on this or my world, because the magic involved is something that didn't exist there and Asgardians haven't thought of doing because they don't know my kind of magic," Harry explained. "I need you to sit on the bike. So I can bond you too." May didn't delay. She climbed on immediately, running her hands over the smooth metal. She stood the bike up, noting it was heavier since the fairing was all metal. There was not a scrap of plastic in sight. "She's a heavy girl," May said, still running her hands over it. "Not for long," Harry said as he placed a hand on her back in the bike's tank. He closed his eyes and focused on the enchantment cluster. It was a big one, and it took a moment for him to grasp the whole thing with his power. When he had it, he created a tether, a stream of magic which flowed between the bike and May, and then he locked it. May was watching as Harry concentrated. She could feel something happening, but it defied description. Then she noticed his features smooth just before a jolt of something entered her body, and she suddenly knew her bike. The Skyline was connected to her personally. She could feel the pressure on the tires and her weight on its seat. It felt right somehow, like she was meant to be there. She ran her hands over its tank and felt her touching it. It felt almost giddy at her attention. "Is she alive?" she managed. She somehow felt there was supposed to be some kind of ceremony involved with something so personal. "Magic is sentient, so in a word, yes," Harry explained. "That bike is enchanted with so much intent magic, it could be said to have thoughts and intent to its purpose as it were. And I just finished the enchantment. You were the last piece," he said. "I could use this machine by using my magic to operate it, but you are its heart now. She'll never be complete without you." Technically, Harry could connect it to someone else, but even he felt the idea was somehow wrong now that he had connected it to her. "You should name her," Sky said, still struck with awe at the machine in front of her. She would beg for a ride with Melinda later, but for now it seemed almost like she'd be interrupting a moment if she asked. "She's not wrong," Harry said. "It will make for a good connection in your mind, but think about it well before deciding. Learn how she handles how she feels first." "She feels thirsty," May said, not knowing how she knew but feeling an emptiness in her tank. "Do you have gas on the island?" Harry smirked. "She runs on water." "What?" most of the people there exclaimed. "Latest development by PI in conjunction with Jarvis actually," we worked on it together. The fuel injectors also transfigures water into high-octane gas, perfect for her to run on and completely without impurities. Once the gas is burned up, it turns into steam and dissipates, so it's environmentally friendly as well. Other than that, Jarvis helped me take her apart and enchant every single part to be unbreakable. She'll never need a service, an oil change or a replacement, but it might be a good idea to take her apart sometime. To really get to know her. Harry smirked as he walked over, opened her tank and made clean water to fill her up. Won't it hurt her? May asked. She's a machine, she has no brain, so there's no risk in causing pain. Her functions, her thoughts are all cast, molded directly into her being. The only thing she will feel is the freedom of movement and the joy of you riding and playing with her. Harry explained. He had put a lot of work into her, but something in him told him it was the right thing to give it to May. He had procrastinated finishing her for months until this opportunity arose. Suddenly he was able to finish it, and in record time. Sure, he'd be able to do it faster next time, but it's like the bike needed a burst of inspiration and May was the one to deliver it. May swayed the bike left and right when Harry finished filling her up. She's lighter. Is it because she's mine now? Felt that, did you? Harry asked with a smirk as he closed her tank. She's lighter because you want her to be. Anyone else gets on her, she'll feel like she weighs a ton. Melinda smiled and leaned forward, leaning on the tank to grab the handles of the bike. No sooner had she touched the handles than the bike roared to life. She jumped for a moment but didn't let go. She felt the engine roar under her when she turned the throttle. It was music to her ears. She dropped into first gear and took off before Harry could even say a thing. He just smiled. It was like they were meant for each other. May rode on the sand and it felt like she was on a road. There was no give as something in the bike stopped it from sinking into the soft sand. Curiously, she looked down and saw for the first time she was not touching the ground. Her wheels were a foot off the ground. She smiled as she suddenly understood instinctively how the Skyline's flight worked. Harry had even said it. It was light because she wanted it to be. It was responding to her intent. Harry watched as May slowly rose from the earth until she seemed to notice for herself. Then there was a whoop of joy as she took off into the sky. Harry quickly summoned his broom and followed her. He had not warned her about the barriers around the island. He followed her as she increased her speed and whooped for joy again when she completed a loop. Harry decided to show off and got his broom under his feet, controlling it with his magic. He flew next to her and casually cast a spell to be heard over the noise of the wind. "Enjoying yourself?" he asked. Melinda almost drew her gun before she realized who it was. She should have known. "She handles like an extension of myself," she screamed, trying to be heard over the wind that didn't seem to touch her. "Ouch, don't scream, I've got communication magic up." Harry chastised. "Sorry," Melinda said. "It's okay, you're not used to it." Harry let it go. "First off, you should be asking how we're even talking. Look at the speedometer." She did and was shocked. "How are we going Mach 2.5 and you're standing on that thing? For that matter, why do I still have my skin?" Harry wiggled his fingers and said, "Magic, you should start getting used to it." He smiled at her. "Okay, a few things we should have covered before you took off. First off, you'll need to remember that the island is hidden by magic. You won't know how to get back without me because you passed its boundaries a long time ago. Secondly, we're about to fly into monitored airspace, so please activate stealth mode." "Stealth mode?" May asked. "Put your hand on the tank and will yourself and the bike unnoticeable." Harry said, "It's not invisibility so much as it is a compulsion for people to ignore you." She did that and felt something happen but couldn't see it. "Did it work?" she asked. "Don't ask questions you know the answer to." "The only reason I see you is because I see through my own magic and that bike's enchantments are all my magic," Harry said as he sat down again. "Okay, flight test 1, follow the leader," he said as he took off and raced ahead of her. An hour later, Harry and May arrived back on the island. May came in for a vertical landing, somehow just knowing she could do it, all while not creating one gust of wind. Nobody seemed to notice her until she remembered to cancel stealth. Suddenly, everyone was looking at her. "May, when did you get back?" Cowlson said. "Just now, actually," she said as she got off the bike and went to go get a cloth from the bartender to wipe the bike down. It wasn't dirty per se, but she wanted to admire all the angles and corners. "She is a beautiful lady, almost as pretty as my Lola," Cowlson said as he walked up to admire the bike as well. He was about to run a hand over her when May gave him a look that promised dire consequences. The bike growled to life as well in warning. May smiled in satisfaction when Cowlson quickly withdrew his hand. "Don't touch what you can't afford," May said and continued her inspection. Not one insect hit the body, it was still pristine. "Oh, come off it," Harry said. That thing is bulletproof. Coulson couldn't scratch it if he tried, and you don't need to wipe it down. Its protections don't allow debris through, so it should stay clean no matter what you put it through, even on the ground. May looked at Harry in annoyance. Could you not? She asked. She was enjoying herself. Okay. Harry said with a smile before he got himself a drink and looked around. Where is Natasha? He asked. She went into your house, Sky said from where she was looking up. What kind of bike May had but couldn't find anything. Harry must have literally built it from the ground up or heavily modified something else. Harry sighed. I've got a long couple of days ahead of me. Yeah, she really wanted a ride on the Skyline, Sky said. When she heard it was unique and bonded to May, she got up and went to the house. I'd better go handle that, Harry said with a sigh. He left the guests and walked to his house. When he entered, he was jumped by Natasha. His drink fell from his hand and shattered on the ground, its contents spilling everywhere as he scrambled to catch her. She kissed him deeply, and Harry was shocked at her passion right now, at least. I thought you were angry, he asked in confusion when she let him up for air. I was, until you bonded it to her. I was confused after that until I thought about it, Natasha said, still in his arms. What did I do this time? Harry asked exasperatedly as he walked with her to the lounge and sat down. Natasha looked at him and smirked. Why, Mr. Potter, are you asking me to explain magic to you? She asked. When Harry smiled and nodded, she continued. Okay, can you tell me what kind of magic you put in the bike? She asked. Flight, wind resistance, damage resistance, stealth, and a few other features. Why? Harry asked. You missed the most important one, intent. She said. Yes, and, he asked. Who did you intend to give that bike to when you started making it? Natasha asked. Harry scratched the back of his head and admitted sheepishly. I was thinking of giving it to you when I finished it actually, until I got stuck midway. He admitted. Don't worry, I understand, but you obviously don't, she said as she grabbed his head in her hands and looked into his eyes. Intent magic, Harry. You told the others it's basically alive with intent magic, and you just told me you intended it for me originally. What does that tell you? She asked. Harry thought about it for a moment until it clicked. The reason both Melinda and Natasha had such extreme reactions to seeing it was because it was literally made for them. It must have called out to them like Siren's song. Oh, I see, I'm sorry, Harry said, knowing it must have been hard for her to give up on something like that. It's not a problem, Natasha assured him. The moment you bonded it with her, the compulsion faded. Then she hesitated. What? Harry asked. She looked at him hopefully. You still want one anyway, don't you? She nodded with a smile. Okay, I can do that. Are you going to motivate me or are you going to threaten me again? He smirked. Natasha grabbed his hands and placed them on her behind. Oh, I'm sure I can find proper motivation, she said as she leaned in for a kiss. 2 hours later, they rejoined the group. They had heard the bike flying around a couple of times, probably giving people lifts to get them to stop asking. They found the group gathered around a fire, with Logan cooking some steaks over the coals that he worked on the side. Apparently Bruce had decided to stop by, and he was deep in discussion with Gemma about potions and the properties of the animals and plants used, while Fitz stood by and tried to get a word in here and there. May was actually enjoying a conversation with Logan about the work he did on the island and supporting the animals, while Coulson, Triplet, and Fury were standing by the bar, watching a football game on the big screen which had been moved into the bar area after the Institute's children left. Harry headed over to help with the food and Logan waved him off. Apparently he could handle it, so Harry went to make some side dishes, but Bruce had apparently already beaten him to it. Shrugging, he went to lay down on the hammock with Natasha. They started planning her bike. Since now that she knew he was going to make it, she had some say in its construction. The next couple of days were busy as Harry, Natasha and their friends introduced the team to the magical world which Harry had basically invented and brought to the island. Fitz/Simmons were ecstatic when Harry offered them access to the databases Tony and Bruce had been setting up, respectively. Both of them were starting from scratch, but with the resources provided and the research started by the original two geniuses, there was much promise for their future enhancements to the field. Jarvis was controlling what Fitz could learn, in case he became too curious or wanted to experiment. Fitz had been overwhelmed by the concepts of the powers that were, and could be applied to the sciences he already knew, while Simmons was trying to update her biological knowledge with the ingredients and influence of magical substances on pharmaceutical-grade drugs and chemicals. Suffice it to say, They would be busy for years before they caught up with the original two, especially with them still researching and upgrading the databases, while the new scientists added their own findings and applications to their respective arts. That and doing their jobs at the same time, that is. Harry had taken the time to consult with Jarvis and Natasha on motorcycle design, and not wanting to copy the original decided to go with a different design, that of a chopper rather than a sports bike like May's. Harry had worked tirelessly for many evenings, while extending his rest time in ways he never really explained to anyone. The only person who might suspect was Coulson, and he had no way of knowing. Coulson had been told about the time turner, but had planned to and would take the information to his grave if he had any choice in the matter. May had finally ended up calling her bike Skyline 1 in reference to hers being the original. It was also to stop the others from calling it Giddy Up as they had started calling her in reference to May's nickname of the cavalry. Natasha had simply referred to hers as the Sky Hog, while Harry was still working on the enchantments. She had felt it was apt for her bike, which she felt was a definite male, as it sounded like a beast when it idled. Natasha had obviously requested some extras like a Gatling gun not to be outdone by Skyline 1. Harry had told her she'd need to wait till he could figure out how to mount such an addition, and she had let it go for now. 5 days after Coulson's team arrived, Harry had the new bike ready and Fury wanted to end the vacation to start working on the EPI Shield agency. He and Harry had been discussing it whenever they had time, while Agent Han joined them every other planning session, and Jarvis had been keeping note and setting priorities for Harry. It had been decided to keep S.H.I.E.L.D. as part of the name, as it was an institution and a trusted name for over half a century. Coulson was relieved when he was told he could continue introducing himself as an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., even if he had to tack on the EPI part. Despite what he said, it had affected him deeply when he was told the original agency was shutting down. After their holiday ended, Harry started working on the new base and had the branch connections set up in a month. Setting up the branch connections had taken time and effort, since all the exits were connected via portals that he had to permanently enchant to work for those agents in the know. Every agent had to sign a document, which was connected to a main one hosted in a secret location, which was only viewable by a select team via camera system. They then had to sign different contracts, depending on which magics they were allowed to use, and only when they completed training in-house, for those magics and how to keep their use secret. Harry had been astounded when Fury's people had come up with protocols and contingencies upon contingencies for when, or if anything went wrong. They had them in place within a couple of weeks of start of operations. For those situations, there were 4 different teams with 4 different and more difficult to acquire clearance levels who would respond given any situation that might require intervention. Active agents were monitored via magical and technological means to ensure their safety in any situation. Any data given would be saved on a central database, which was only accessible by the senior staff, who had a completely different set of credentials and clearance levels. Every level of the system had redundant security and protocols to ensure that everyone knew they were safe and could trust their colleagues. Every signed contract provided the signer with a set of protections, including letting people know when they or their loved ones were in mortal peril. This was a big attraction for those who knew what happened to their colleagues who did not sign on with Hydra willingly. Speaking of which, those people who had been forced into service were given trials first. With Veritaserum and a contract to confirm their loyalty, they were allowed to rejoin the ranks of the newly formed S.H.I.E.L.D., while their family's individual safety was confirmed before they were offered the chance to leave or continue. To Harry's great shock, the majority of those people joined as soon as they found out their family was finally safe, with a minority of the people deciding to leave to spend time with the family they thought they'd never see again. Harry had ensured their names were kept on a list, in case they ever changed their minds. These people deserved a second chance even if they needed to rest first. Fury had decided that one of the new S.H.I.E.L.D.'s priorities would be to inspect and ensure the safety of the distribution centers, which Harry in turn had to create portals to. Coulson's team was told to continue with their previous mission, investigating the appearance of powered individuals and alien technology. They had strict orders to preserve life and offer support where necessary. Epi, as it was called in the press, was getting a lot of good publicity, even when government started demanding whatever technology was allowing the agents to respond as quickly as they did. EPI had its own public relations department, which was very capable. They were claiming proprietary tech and refused to say more. The few times someone tried to take an agent in for questioning, they had simply activated the failsafe, which was a bracelet that had a one-time use for repelling unwanted attention. Then they just walked away. Some of the items were enchanted specifically for one-time use to ensure nobody abuses them. If an item was used, it would also change color, so that it could not be hidden that it had been used, and the agent then had to give a written report for the reason the use was necessary. Fury had insisted on redundant security and checks on items given to agents to use. Nobody argued, as it would be easy to abuse magic without rules in place. The rooms of requirement had been renamed to Augmented Reality Training, or ART rooms for short. It allowed the agents to discuss their recent training sessions without fear of being overheard. Not that room of requirement would mean anything to anyone anyway. Either way, the ART rooms were a huge success, as agents could be subjected to specific situations with as many variables, unknowns, and people as were required, without spending massive amounts of manpower and resources on setting up training environments and simulations with support staff and security measures. Another use that Harry had not thought about was as a rudimentary pensive, where a person could show what had happened in a situation by showing a reenactment in the room. Harry had arranged a bonus for the agent that had come up with that and given them access to the room for an hour as a special reward. This had become a common request, and they had had to set up a waiting list for when the rooms would be available, and a reward system was put in place for acquiring the rights to use the room as well. Harry refused to make more rooms than the singular ones at every base. They were also strictly controlled, with only the branch managers capable of arranging any kind of access. As a result of the ART room's success, agents were able to train with magical artifacts that were created in the room without needing Harry to enchant and bond items every time. Only once a certain level of proficiency was reached would an agent be given the opportunity for Harry to bond them with their new gear. Another side effect of having everyone at the new agency aware of magic was that they could now be treated for chronic diseases and conditions. Enchanted replacement limbs became available, and people who wanted the opportunity were brought out of retirement. Hill had had the bright idea of approaching soldiers who had lost limbs with an offer to serve a new agency, as long as they signed the necessary contracts. Needless to say, that opened up the recruitment options tremendously, and EPI suddenly had more recruits than it could handle, until older veterans were approached for their experience and they were offered similar deals. Some of them just wanted a potion to sleep at night without nightmares, while others just wanted to feel useful. The amount of respect Harry was receiving from anyone he walked past was very flattering and humbling at the same time. Those people who were ex-military would actually stop and salute him whenever he passed them. Harry had actually needed to order one man who had just received 2 prosthetic legs and an arm to sit down and get used to the additions first, before he hurt himself. The tears of gratitude in the big man's eyes were touching. If an employee needed to, they could apply for a family member's treatment as well, as long as contracts were signed. So far, no family members had lost their memories of magic, which was unexpected, especially with how their lives had been changed. A rumor started circulating that known members of EPI had access to medical advancements that was not available to the public. When stories of miraculous recoveries started spreading, with those people affected refusing to explain how their recoveries occurred, people started asking why. When Harry was informed that plans to arrest those people they had helped were in the works, he had simply called for a press conference. Tony, Bruce, Charles, and Hank were there with him, on the day of the conference, with many agents stealthily mixed into the crowd. They waited for the press and very large crowd of civilians to quiet down and then started. Harry walked forward and took the podium. This time he was not experiencing any nerves, as he was angry at what he had heard was planned for the people they had helped. Good afternoon, my name is Harry Potter. I am the CEO and founder of Potter Innovations. He started. He waited patiently for the spontaneous clapping and cheering to stop. I have called this press conference to discuss some things that I believe the public should be aware of. Here Harry paused and looked behind him. I should probably introduce my colleagues first, he said, and pointed at them one at a time. First we have Tony Stark of Stark Industries, who has been working with me on some gadgets and prosthetics we hope to release to the public in the next couple of years. Next we have Dr. Bruce Banner, who is a biochemist and the head of PI's Medical Research Department. Next is Dr. Henry McCoy, who is a geneticist that has recently started working with Dr. Banner and is the head of PI's Medical Application and Delivery Department. Harry said. Mutant, came an angry yell from the crowd. Harry just smiled and looked behind him where a large image of the bigot appeared. The bigot's face lost all color. Captain America walked out of the building and to the podium where he spoke to the crowd. I dislike that word, He said, "I find it humiliating that I live in a country where such intolerance is accepted. It sounds like the things I heard back in Germany. Just because someone is different doesn't give them any less right to live." Then he looked directly at the bigot. "It doesn't give you the right to judge them either." Harry nodded in thanks to Steve and shook his hand. "Ladies and gentlemen, Captain America." There was clapping and cheering, and Harry noted the bigot was being escorted from the crowd. It didn't even look like any of his people were doing it. That gave him hope. "Yes, wow, Tony, you should warn me when your hero friends are around," he said with some humor. I didn't even have something for him to sign. There was some more laughter from the crowd at that. Harry then turned back to the crowd and held up a hand for quiet. When the sound lessened, he started again. "Lastly, you may recognize Professor Charles Xavier, who is a known enhance that has been working for years to protect those with and without abilities, along with his X-Men." Harry smiled at the man sitting in his wheelchair and he nodded. "You may ask why he is here, and the answer is simple and related to why this conference was called." Harry paused for effect before continuing. "The reason he is here is because he is also a patient of our medical research department." Harry turned to the man again. "Professor, if you would please join me at the podium to greet the people who have come to see us." Charles smiled and rolled his wheelchair to the podium, where it was lowered for him to speak into the collection of microphones. "Hello, and thank you for inviting me, Mr. Potter." Harry smiled and said, "It's good to have you here, Professor. Could you please inform these people and those at home why you are here?" "Certainly, Harry, it would be my pleasure," he said as Harry took a step back and Charles took the prime position. "Good afternoon, America, and all the other people watching around the world. My name is Charles Xavier, and you may know me or my team, the X-Men, from our various missions around the world, protecting those without power from those who abuse theirs. I have known Mr. Potter for just a bit more than a year, ever since he helped us with some trouble we had been having. As you know, he has been involved with some revolutionary machines that use techniques only his company has been able to come up with, and as such we had to turn to him with one of our issues. That issue, however, is not the reason we have been working with Mr. Potter since. He's been working with us simply to help the children. He has made generous donations and even sponsored a camping trip for the children, since not many resorts cater to the enhanced community. These children have not seen his kind of selfless kindness since before their enhancements presented themselves, and many of them were forced to leave their homes. I was quite surprised to be contacted one day by Dr. Banner about a breakthrough he had made. It was unfortunately quite experimental, and he needed to speak to someone in the field of genetics, and Mr. Potter referred him to me. I helped as far as I could, but my time is limited, and even though I really wanted to, he needed someone with more time than I, so I suggested he speak to Dr. Henry McCoy, who knows the subject even better than myself. They have since made breakthroughs in delivery systems that will, one day soon, eliminate the need for adjusting treatments to individuals beyond dosage, that is. There is also another reason why Dr. Banner contacted me personally. Here Charles rolled back and threw the blanket off his legs before slowly standing from his chair. The podium extended again and Xavier walked up to it. The crowd was completely silent and gawking as realization settled in. As you can see, some of these treatments work perfectly. There is much I cannot discuss with you legally. That is also the reason why so many people refuse to speak. Some of them may need treatment in the future as well. And breaching contract would definitely make them ineligible to continue treatment. The crowd was fortunately still quiet. Harry walked up to the podium and shook Xavier's hand and thanked him before turning to the crowd again. "Okay, so now that you have an example of what we're working on and know why the people behind me are here, I'd like to state one thing. While we'd love to make all these treatments available to you, if the governments of the world continue with their plans to arrest and interrogate our patients, we might end up needing to close the department, for fear of endangering our patients' lives." There was an almost collective intake of breath, before the majority of the crowd started making their objections known. Harry held up his hand again and had to wait a couple of minutes before the crowd started controlling themselves again. "I'm not going to say which governments, even though I do know who you are, but I do not want to cause a panic. What I will say is this. If any of our patients are taken, we will recover them and stop offering our support to that country until the government or government official responsible has been replaced. Like the American government, we do not negotiate with terrorists. If a government of any country abducts its people or threatens them, they will go onto PI's registry as a government run by terrorists. That is our response to your plans to terrorize your people. Thank you." Harry finished. He had been angry and he'd said his part. Hopefully, the way he stated things would make it inconceivable for any government to do as they had planned. He'd avoided mentioning any specific country, so none of them would be able to blame him for any of what might happen should they ignore the warning. The first country to ignore his warning was China. They had abducted 5 people, who had been recovered within an hour of their abduction and offered asylum until they could go back. Harry had debated on dismantling the distribution centers, but decided to leave them in place, but to use the infrastructure via the Erder network to send a message to anyone on the network telling them of who was taken, from where and what was done for them by PI. The government tried to use a scapegoat, but testimony under Veritaserum gave them a different story. The man was obliviated of the experience, but more information appeared on the network. 2 months later, PI publicly declared they were once again supporting China, when the Prime Minister was voted out of office for treason against the Chinese people. No other countries tried again. That did not mean people were not abducted, but fortunately that just led EPI to more people who needed to go to jail or EPI's personal detention facilities. That had been another development that Harry didn't necessarily like, but which he put in place for all the different branches. Fidelius protected prisons. Most of them already had enough space for him to enlarge, modify, and enchant, but those that didn't soon had. Harry didn't put too much effort into them, besides a blanket calming effect, and hiding the exits from people who were meant to stay incarcerated. He'd had to add specific protections when powered individuals started being arrested, but so far there had been nothing he couldn't handle. Steve had ended up becoming a field officer for training recruits and leading missions. He had signed up the minute Harry informed him of what they had uncovered about the soldier, aka Sergeant James Buchanan Bucky Barnes. Since then, Steve could be found visiting him in the special containment room, which Harry had set up for him. Once he realized the man had been brainwashed, Harry had used a combination of potions and spells to help Bucky remember his past, which was coming back slowly. He then allowed Steve access to his pensive, so that Steve could share memories much as he had done with Logan. Bucky had been slow to trust, but by the end of the first month he had asked for Harry to enter his mind, to see if he could fix some of the things he could feel was wrong. Harry had reluctantly agreed. Fury had set up a room for him, with Bucky restrained and his arm pinned down with heavy machinery, just in case Harry's influence activated some of the soldiers' programming. Once everything was ready, Harry dived into his mind. What he found was a whirlwind of locked-up emotions, memories, and experiences. It seemed that whenever his mind was wiped, it simply locked the memories behind a wall of pain which the mind shied away from. That and the damn control words. That was quite deviously done. Even if he regained his memories and successfully escaped those who would control him, if they ever found him again they could reactivate mind control, simply by saying a string of specific words. That would not do at all. Harry had ended up obliviating the memories of the pain, which held his memories back and the control words in their entirety, before exiting the man's mind. I found something, and did what I could so that your memories can come back naturally. Harry paused and looked him right in the eyes again. I'm going to warn you, a lot of what you did is going to disturb you, but you have to remember you were being controlled. I've seen what happens to people who refuse to accept that they were not in control. Don't let your actions under mind control define you, he said seriously. Bucky looked at him and asked with palpable apprehension, did they have me kill innocents? Harry looked at him and nodded. A couple of times you killed women, but you soon became unstable and they had to wipe your mind again. It seems you didn't want to do it, and that was when you started fighting your programming. Bucky could not maintain eye contact. Could you not just wipe my memories of the last 70 years? He begged. Harry looked at him. I could try, but your mind has been messed with so much that I might do irreparable damage. It would be best to wait for your memories to come back and your mind to settle before attempting something like that. Steve walked into the room. He had been watching and listening. Don't do it, he insisted. I just got my best friend back. I refuse to lose him again. Bucky looked at Steve. Listen, Steve. No, you can't do this, Steve insisted. You've only just escaped your nightmare. Why would you want to chance permanent damage when you might start to live your life again? At this point, Harry excused himself and let them talk. He assured Fury that he found and removed his triggers and that he would need to be kept in observation for a while yet while his memories came back. They'd need to keep a suicide watch on him too. There were some horrors which Harry had glimpsed, including the murders of Howard Stark and his wife Maria, Tony's mother, that might push him over the edge. This could become a problem. Fury said, we should definitely keep this from Stark, especially if we don't want to fracture the Avengers. Steve would stand up for his friend and Stark would go on the warpath to see his parents avenged. Harry shook his head. While I agree with you that Tony will be unreasonable when it comes to his parents, I think that keeping this from him would cause more damage. If he ever found out, he'd blame anyone that knew and didn't tell him. I refuse to be on that list. If you want a bit of time, I can give you that. To work up a strategy on how to tell him, but I refuse to keep this from him forever. Fury did not look happy, but saw the logic in Harry's reasoning at least. Fine, give me a month and I'll have everything set up. I might require a contract from you for Stark's peace of mind. I'll probably already have to use Veritaserum. He groused. Fair enough, you have a month. Harry said, then he looked Fury in the eyes. Thank you for understanding. Thanks for not making it an order. Fury said, I know we said we're partners, but everyone at EPI knows that you're the ultimate authority and the one that signs the paychecks. He finished with a smirk. I didn't because I know you can probably handle these things better than me. Harry replied honestly, the only benefit I get out of our current situation is that you can't order me around. If I wanted to tell Tony after you forbade it, I could simply do it anyway. He said, and I don't want to force your hand. But you know I'm right about this. I know what makes and breaks teams, Potter, Fury said with a straight face. I'd just rather we don't put our people through this kind of emotional stress needlessly. At least if we do it, we can make sure it doesn't pop up when it's inconvenient to us. Harry left the detention facility and went back to his lab where he was busy working on rune and charms experiments. Tony stayed in near-permanent contact via remote connection. He was finally able to crack sustained flight, and was now working on things that would be necessary for space travel. Tony wanted their first sojourn into space to happen before the end of the year, but wanted to get inertial dampening sorted out first. There were charms for that, but he really wanted to get the runes to work. He was close to a success too, so Harry didn't think his goal was unachievable. Tony had almost finished his first flying car. Only some internal parts were still in production, and he'd test drive it with Harry in the next week, as Pepper had insisted, just in case. It was sleek and modern, with retractable wheels and repulsors for extra speed, not that he needed them, but it also added credence to it being a technological achievement. Tony had decided that once he'd succeeded in space travel that he would consider himself a master of ancient runes, and Harry had agreed that it would definitely be enough for him to have access to Hermione's research. Actually, he already thought Tony was ready. But he'd also noted that Tony wanted to prove something to himself, and this was a challenge he needed to overcome. He'd not be surprised if Tony's next move was to create a fully magical Iron Man suit, once he could crack magical data storage and processing that is. Harry in the meanwhile was busy with Jarvis on the construction of the first rune-based muscle, when he wasn't busy enchanting items for the agents of EPI. They had confirmed successful functioning of the artificial nerve, and while heat, cold, touch, pressure and vibration sensing nerves were working fine, the pain-sensing nerve was still not working. Harry had asked why Jarvis wanted it so badly, and Jarvis had explained that he wanted to experience pleasure as well. Apparently you couldn't have one without the other. Harry was astounded and encouraged at Jarvis's fierce desire to have the whole human experience. So he was helping a part of Jarvis that wasn't busy with Tony's work. Harry had actually asked Tony to expand on Jarvis's mainframe so that he could do his own work. Harry had even offered to pay for it, but Tony had refused. Instead, he had added the expansion himself and added a remote workstation for Jarvis for his own experiments. They'd still have to share the fabricators for automatic assembly. But Jarvis had no problems waiting for when they were available. Jarvis was also working on plans for emulating the effects of hormones and chemicals on the brain, so he was researching the physiological effects and in near constant communication with Hank for that. Hank had been more than willing to help. If Jarvis was able to do what he'd set out to do, they might one day be able to produce replacement organs, fix severed nerve clusters, and produce working artificial skin grafts. Though apparently there was already a scientist working on that particular project. Harry had given Fury almost a whole month before he was called in for briefing. Fury's entire plan revolved around Harry, Steve, Clint, and Bucky, who had recently been given the all-clear by Harry, which was good enough for Fury almost. He still insisted that Bucky get tracking charm at the least, just in case things go badly or Harry missed something. He also had Harry go on a little errand to ensure the success of the mission. So it was that Harry had invited the guys over to the beach house for a fully catered poker night, calling it a boys' night. Bruce said he wasn't much of a gambler, but Harry paid his buy-in and told him to just enjoy it even if he lost, along with Steve's, Bucky's, and Clint's. It was all a gimmick anyway. They settled down and started playing. Everyone had their advantages. Tony and Bruce used their intelligence to their advantage. Harry could easily figure out the other players' hands, and the super soldiers could pick up on cues that were too small for a normal human to pick up on. It turned out to be a rather fair match, with all of their abilities and skills working against each other. Harry was the only one kicked out as he had been caught looking at people's cards, which Tony had pointed out gleefully with logic Harry could not refute. The more they played, the drunker they became, and as they played, they talked. They talked about adjusting to the 21st century, and science and magic and everything from relationships to taxes, sex, religion, and money. The three forbidden drunken subjects. Tony gleefully told the rest of Harry's supposed divine status, much to his chagrin. When it came to work, Tony inevitably shared a story of himself as Iron Man, and then questions were asked about how that started. Then Steve and Bucky shared some of their earlier memories together, where Steve was too small to stand up for himself. Clint had been briefed, and he shared his experience of being controlled, which brought them back to Bucky and his experience of the same thing. He was still getting his memories back and had not yet realized he had killed Tony's parents. So of course I feel guilty. I pulled the trigger. I didn't want to, but every couple of days I remember another face, another voice begging for their lives, and my cold detachment as I ended them and moved on. I remember fighting them when they sent me to do something unimaginable, but they'd simply wipe me, send me on the next mission, and then freeze me again. You can't blame yourself, man. Clint said, I killed quite a few people while I was under. It took me a while, but I now know that I wasn't the one to blame for that. It was Loki, or at least that damn scepter of his. He looked at Harry. I know he wasn't really in control, but when I have those memories, I inevitably see him smiling at me with that deranged smile. He thinks it's supposed to look intimidating, Harry laughed. I once turned into him and smiled the same way, and he told me I did it wrong. Clint chuckled and Steve spoke up. Well, I trust Harry's contract to keep him in line. We've all seen that they work. Back on topic, though, Tony said, I know what it's like to regret deaths caused by your actions, even indirectly. My father's company at least had honorable intent, until stains started selling under the table. Now I try to make it right by saving all the lives I can. That's all you can do, really. Make a difference and don't be part of the problem. Harry looked around the table and got a nod from Clint. Tony, he started, I've got something to tell you, he said as he took a calming draft from his pocket and held it out to Tony. Is this where you tell me about Bucky killing my parents while under mind control? Tony asked as he ignored the calming draft and took a sip of fire whiskey instead. Harry stopped thinking for a second before he seemed to reboot. Wait, what? How? Tony smirked at him. That girlfriend of yours is a devious thing. She got Pepper to talk to me, even stroked my ego by telling me how big a man I'd have to be able to get over myself and see the truth. Also got me all logical about it. He sighed and looked at the drink. I'm not proud to say it took a whole couple of days before I stopped thinking of murdering you, he said as he looked up at Bucky. But I know my parents would not have wanted it. I can't blame you, just like I can't blame Clint or Harry. He looked at Harry. Thanks for trusting me, by the way. Nat told Pepper you refused to keep it from me. Harry nodded. Sorry we tried to butter you up first. I just needed you to be as receptive as I thought I could make it. You know I wouldn't hurt you. I just felt all the pain Bucky felt in his memories, and I know he's not a bad person. Yeah, that was the decider for me too. Tony said, I trust you, Harry. When Pepper told me that you experienced Bucky's regret and pain with every kill, I had no choice but to concede that I'll never get the revenge I want. First off, I did not experience every kill, but I got snippets and emotions. I was not reading his mind for information. I was trying to recover the buried memories. Harry informed them. Second, I was able to find the Soviet general who ordered the hit and recovery of the serum from your father. Serum? Steve asked, while Tony asked you do. At the same time. Yeah, let's leave that alone for now. Let's just say the situation is handled and leave it at that. Okay, Harry asked. No, what serum? Steve asked insistently. He was only aware of one that Howard would have been interested in. Harry sighed. It was another imperfect copy of the super soldier serum, but it was all used and the experiments were buried. We've got some agents interrogating the missing general right now. Harry said, and what's going to happen to this general? Do I get to meet him? Tony asked. It depends. Harry started and looked Tony right in the eye. Do you want to kill him in cold blood while he is locked up? I can arrange it if you want, but I guarantee you Pepper won't like what you become after. He warned. Tony looked indecisive for a moment. Damn you, Harry. At least tell me he's not getting away with it. Of course not, Harry said with a devilish smirk. He's in a special stasis field cell. It is 1 year to the hour in there. Every hour for him is a year for us. I'd not want to mess with Fury ever. He told me he plans on keeping him only as long as the law allowed. Harry shuddered. Fury said we couldn't hold him for more than 24 hours his time. Tony smiled while Steve, Clint, and Bruce winced. Bucky was still looking at Harry in shock. Sorry, Harry and Bucky muttered together. What for? Harry asked. For making you see those memories. Bucky said sadly. I'm experiencing them firsthand and they are bad enough with that, but seeing it from my perspective must be really hard on you since you didn't even do a thing. What were you apologizing for? For seeing your personal memories. I didn't mean to intrude. Harry explained. As for feeling bad about me experiencing them, I've got training in the mental arts and can suppress the emotions and memories easily enough, especially if they are not my own. I find if I don't deal with my own memories and emotions, they try to come to the surface on their own. Could I learn that skill? Bucky asked. Steve nodded along. He wouldn't mind knowing that trick either. I've got a book for you, but I suspect Bruce would be the person to speak to. He's been practicing occlumency for a while now to help control his emotions. Harry said, looking at Bruce. Bruce nodded. Sure, you can join Tony and me. Come by in the morning. I go for training in the room and follow that up with meditation and practice. He said. Tony, Harry asked, how do you think I keep the runes all sorted in my head? There's too much for a normal person to keep there without some kind of mechanism. I find that the occlumency helps me keep everything nicely ordered. Tony said with a shrug. Harry was glad he had taken it so well. It did not mean Natasha was off the hook though. She knew what he was planning and made all that worry be for nothing. Steve eventually turned out to be the winner of that poker night, much to everyone's shock, including Steve's. He tried to refuse the money when Harry handed him a stack of bills, but Harry just laughed. Hey, you could use that to take a girl out to a nice dinner. Don't be so quick to turn it down. What girl would I take out? Steve asked with a shake of his head. I don't know, but if you don't act soon, I might end up setting you up on a blind date and ask Fury to tell you it's a mission. Harry threatened. I remember Natasha talking about a girl with a lip piecing. Steve actually lost some color and nodded in understanding. There was one girl that had caught his eye recently. He'd just have to work up the courage and take her for a coffee. That's what people did right. A couple of months later, hey, you want to get some lunch? Tony asked from the other side of the large mirror setup along one wall as Harry entered his lab. If one didn't know, it would seem like it was one big room, with duplicate hardware on both sides as Harry and Tony sat at their respective desks. The mirror was seldom disconnected and looked and functioned like glass, for those who didn't know better. We've been working through these mirrors for weeks, but I'm in the mood to get out of the lab and seeing some actual people. What did you have in mind? Harry asked. Well, I was thinking a good old-fashioned cheeseburger would be nice. Tony said. Harry thought about it and nodded. Give me a minute, I just need to go do something real quick, he said before disappearing to the island so he could go fetch something he had made for Tony. He thought about it for a moment and went to the stasis closet and transfigured some healthier food into a couple of Tony's favorite cheeseburgers. They could visit Bruce or some of their other friends after lunch. Then he apparated to Tony's lab, but Tony wasn't there, so he walked out of the secret lab only to be shocked by the amount of people waiting in the room. Surprise! Came the shout from the people in attendance. What's going on? Harry asked as he put the plates with the food he had brought on a table. Natasha walked up to him and hugged him. Happy birthday, Harry. She said. Oh, is it really? Harry asked. Wow, it had been a couple of months again. He had been so damn busy. Thank you, he said to her as he hugged her back and mischievously ran his modified tickling charm down her body just before he let go and walked over to Tony, who was smirking, having successfully pulled one over on Harry. Natasha had not moved from her spot as she struggled to control herself. Harry would be paying for that later. Happy birthday, Harry, Tony said, shaking his hand. You really should not be surprised that people remember this date. He looked down as he let go of Harry's hand with a ring on his finger that had not been there before. Harry decided to prank the man as a reward for the surprise party. What's this? He asked, trying and failing to remove the ring. You're so smart, figure it out, Harry said with a smile as he walked to the first guests. There were a lot of people, all of whom were in on the secret of Harry's magic, of course. So basically a lot of people who have all been on Harry's island in the past, including but not limited to, the X-Men Darcy, Eric, Selvig, not Laneshare, a couple of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s people and most of Coulson's team and the Avengers. It won't shock people when I touch them, will it? Tony asked as he followed him, looking at the gaudy ring with the large S on it. Harry got a gleam in his eye and said, let's just say, Pepper would not appreciate you touching any other woman with that hand, right now. Tony looked confused, but only for a second before he got a huge smile and started looking about. He spotted his girl mingling with some of the female X-Men whom she had not seen in a couple of months and made a beeline. What did you do? Natasha asked as Tony approached his girl. I made him a ring that does what I did to you just now, Harry replied honestly. Natasha controlled her features and watched. You know she's going to blame you if she can't control her reaction, right? Harry shrugged. It's my birthday, so she'll have to forgive me. Also, Tony's smart enough to have figured it out. He should know better. Natasha just smirked as Tony grabbed Pepper and gave her a big hug. Her responding moan and consequent blush was fortunately missed by the majority of the happily talking room. The music helped as well. Tony had instantly let go, but the damage had been done. His face showed shock as Pepper took his other hand and dragged him from the room. He caught Harry's eye and mouthed, I owe you big. That seems to have worked out rather well. Harry smiled. I just hope he forgives me when he realizes he can't remove the ring for 24 hours and the effect is permanently on. Just then there was a flash from outside and Harry stepped outside to see Odin, Frigga, Thor and an unknown royal guard, probably there as protection for the family, on the royal carpet, descending from the roof of the penthouse, where Heimdall must have deposited them. Of course he knew and told them about the party. As soon as they landed, Frigga walked up to him and embraced him. Happy birthday, Harry. Odin was next and grabbed Harry's forearm and hugged him tightly with the other. Indeed, it is good to celebrate with you. Odin held him at arm's length and looked him in the eye. That does not excuse the fact that you come visit us so seldom these days. Frigga is constantly hearing of how busy you are and thinking she'll be an inconvenience if she came to visit. I do not like her feeling that way, he said sternly. Harry looked at her guiltily before hugging her again. You should have said so. Of course you're welcome. Why would you ever feel that way? Frigga smiled at him and said, I'm glad to know, but you know that Heimdall keeps an eye on you whenever he can. Not that that is often these days. Apparently you hide in that secret location that you've established your worldwide protection guild in, she asked before continuing, and let me tell you, Odin has been talking about that a lot these days. He'll be wanting to hear all about it at some point. Stop spoiling my fun, Frigga. Odin spoke up with some humor before turning to Harry. I do hope you can indulge an old man by telling him some of what you are up to. It has been a while since the people of Asgard has felt the need for invention and change. The humans of Midgard always impressed me with their capacity for change and adaptation. Harry smiled and nodded. I could tell you some of it if you want, and might even have a question or two for you about some of the things I'm working on. He agreed, though there are some things I have to keep quiet for fear of exposing secrets not my own. Odin nodded, though he did not look too happy. It's been a long time since I've not had access to all the information. Thanks to Heimdall, it will be an adjustment to know there are some things I cannot know. I apologize, Father, but I have given my word. I trust Heimdall with my secrets, but it is not his trust I am trying to maintain. Harry apologized. Odin nodded again. You honor yourself in the house of Odin with your words. You are loyal and wise as always, and I shall strive not to push you to give answers that would have you betray your confidences. Thor stepped up next and hugged Harry in a huge bear hug. Brother, it is good to see you again. You are barely ever around anymore. Hey bro, Harry quipped, using Thor's own words from when he had known of the adoption before him. You really should come visit more often then. And don't give me an excuse. He looked between all of them as Thor made to object. All of you have mirrors and could contact me anytime, even when I'm at the office. Frigga seemed to be unable to make eye contact. It seemed she had been trying to guilt him into coming to Asgard for a visit. Did she have something planned again? He'd just have to get Natasha to feel her out for him. He glanced next to him and sure enough she was there and seemed to have picked up on it as well. Then the guard walked up and extended a hand at Harry. Harry took it and shook it when a very familiar voice said, Happy birthday. I decided to keep my presence hidden for the time being. Heimdall informed us of who all would be here. Loki had apparently decided that a disguise would put people's minds at ease. Harry smiled and said, It's probably just as well. Until you save Earth from certain disaster, there will always be those that would try to shoot you on sight. The guard smirked, nodded and stepped back. Harry would have to arrange a drink for him. Loki could maintain an illusion of a guard and enjoy a drink at the same time after all. Harry had a wonderful time mixing with his friends. Seeing so many of them gathered together reminded him of all the connections he had made since he arrived in this world. He spoke to all of them and thanked them for coming. An hour later Tony was back and told Harry to start opening gifts while Pepper and Natasha went off to talk, presumably about magic in the bedroom. Not many of the guests had known what to get Harry. Unfortunately, it was difficult to shop for a person who could literally snap his fingers and just make stuff. Tony had reminded them all about his love for his bar, though, so bottles of alcohol became the standard gift. Tony's own gift to Harry was an experiment he had worked on using some input from Bruce. They had decided to make a different kind of magical alcohol. Vodka. Harry would have to come up with whatever magical enchantment would go into it, but they had already worked out the effect with some magical ingredients. Harry didn't waste any time and opened the large bottle immediately, pouring a round of shots which halved the contents of the bottle. Once everyone had a shot, he lifted his and said, Cheers. To Harry, Tony piped up and the rest of the group followed his lead. Harry downed the shot and shivered. That's cold, he exclaimed, looking at the shot glass and then the bottle. It's meant to be. We got the idea from one of the potions recipes in the library. Something that was meant to cool you off on warm days. Apparently it was used before comfort charms like cooling and heating became the norm. Bruce said with a smile. I thought that maybe we could work on a whole elemental range at some point with earth, wind, fire and water represented. Tony offered. Harry cocked his head. And what would this be? Cold isn't one of them, he asked. Tony waved a finger. But ice is a form of water, and how else would you represent water when you're already drinking? Harry had to admit. He had a point. He could have fun with this too. I can't wait to try a couple of cocktails with this stuff. I can already see it. Cooling cocktails. He mimed a sign in the air and willed a bit of magic to display it in sparkling letters. Well, you've got a couple of bottles at the bar on the beach, Tony informed him. We've been thinking of names for it, and so far we've got iced vodka and Loki's breath. Harry perked up and noticed the guard look up as well. Loki's breath, you say? I think iced vodka will work for the standard stuff. We can use Loki's breath for the final product we send to Asgard like we did with Odin's brew. Then he looked at the Asgardians, who didn't seem impressed. We'll have to give it a good kick though. He looked at Tony hopefully. Tony had noticed the look and nodded. Sure, we can just follow the same steps we took last time for the fire whiskey except stronger. Then he pointed at Harry. But you'll have to figure out an enchantment first. Something like frosting up the glass or cooling down the room when you take a shot. Harry thought about it and had an idea, but he'd have to experiment to get it right. He'd leave that for later. Thanks guys, this is an amazing gift. Bruce stepped forward. Technically I only helped Tony on his gift. He went looking for ideas and found the cooling tonic on his own. Bruce reached into his pocket and removed a vial from his pocket. This is my gift to you. Harry took it and looked at the clear liquid inside. What is it? It's my mastery project. Bruce shrugged. Felix Felicis. Harry was shocked. I can't accept this. It's too valuable and must mean a lot to you. Don't worry about it, Bruce said with a wink. I've got more. Really? Harry's eyebrows rose as he decided to slip the vial into his pouch. How long did it take you? It was all one batch. I found a way to simplify the process. But it required that I make 10 times more, which is probably why it wasn't done in the past. It would be quite expensive if you didn't have an island of willing ingredient donors. Bruce said with a smile. That, and it took twice as long to make as the original. What was that, Harry? Odin asked, having approached when he saw Harry's shock at the potion. Bruce's gift, Harry said. He gave me a potion that took masters back in my old world to brew. Oh. Odin's eyebrow rose. And what does the potion do? It increases one's luck, Harry said. I only used one once in my life, and it was like it led me to answers I needed to find when I wasn't even aware of how to go about finding them. Truly, it does sound like a marvel of magical brewing. Odin nodded and turned to Bruce. How much would it cost me to commission one of these potions of luck? Harry left Bruce to speak with Odin. He smiled at the deer caught in the headlights look he sent Harry. Bruce would have to start working on pricing for his potions at some point. He'd be able to use the income for funding like normal potions masters did. Not that he had any financial constraints. Selling his wares to the king of Asgard would definitely be a feather in his cap, however. Also, he might just barter for special ingredients or lost knowledge. I've been begging him for one of those, Tony whined. Apparently, Bruce had been very reluctant to give away his masterwork potions, especially since it was not medical in nature. I believe Jarvis has something for you as well. He spoke up again, pointing to the side where one of Tony's bots was trying to navigate the crowd of people. Harry smiled but waited for the bot to get to him. When it arrived, it lifted a package to Harry. It was flat and rectangular. It looked like it contained a large tablet. Harry tore open the package and looked at it. It also looked like a tablet, but there was no on switch that he could see. What am I looking at, Jarvis? Harry asked the ceiling. That, Harry, is the first modern pensive. I took the rune schemes from the pensive you normally use and worked on it for a long time. Finding the correct way to use the intent on already carved runes was not easy, but I figured it out a couple of months ago. Jarvis said proudly. Really, that's awesome, Harry said, holding the tablet up to see it better. He still could only make out the top, because it had a shallow indentation where one would normally see the screen. How does it work? Jarvis seemed smug when he had to explain a magical device to Harry. You put it down, face up, and add the memory as you'd normally do. Then you can tap the edge to project the memory out or touch the repository to enter it. He explained while Harry nodded, but that's not all. Once a memory is loaded, you can show the memory on its face like any digital device. I used Master Stark's light runes with some rune nerve connections to make the display and the touch-sensitive functions. There are one or two other features, including storage space for multiple memories at the same time, he said smugly as the robot reached down and picked up a booklet. Harry took it and read the cover. Pensive V20. You're a comedian, Jarvis, but thanks, this will be really useful, he gushed. Hold on. Did you just give Harry the first ever magical touch screen? Tony asked. I wanted to make one of those first. Jarvis ignored Tony but continued sounding smug as he reminded Harry, I really suggest you read the instruction manual. It's got a couple of features you may want to know about. I will, Jarvis, thanks again, Harry said as he stowed the pensive tablet and its manual in his bag. He'd be looking into it the moment he had time. The rest of the party proceeded as one would expect. Tony kept on touching Pepper inappropriately, no matter where he touched her, until she dragged him away again. He was having way too much fun with this, Harry thought. By the time people started leaving, it was late in the evening and Harry was confronted by Odin and Frigga. You must come to Asgard tomorrow, Frigga began after Natasha had convinced her that one surprise party was enough for this year. The people of Asgard would love celebrating your birthday with you. While we do not make as big of an event of it as Midgardians, you are still so young. Still a child by our standards. Hey, I know I look pretty young, but I just turned 34, you know. Harry scoffed. Thor scoffed, barely more than a babe. Even I am more than 1,000 years old. Harry's mouth hung open for a moment. He had not realized. Wow, you're looking good for an old man. Harry joked. He had known Odin and Frigga were old, with mentions of a couple thousand years before having their first child. But for some reason he thought Thor was closer to his own age. Do not worry about being judged by our standards. Midgardians tend to live shorter lives, so they achieve maturity much sooner. Odin said, you have already proven yourself a man among men in Asgard. None will judge you poorly based off your actual age. In fact, most are impressed at how much you have achieved with so few years under your belt. When do we celebrate your birthdays then? Harry asked. Every week actually, Odin laughed. Did you not know that the very days of the week are named after us? Wednesday was named after a younger version of my name on your world, Woden. Thursday was Thursday and Friday was for Frigga. Most of the mortals of Midgard don't even realize. Harry heard the sound of glass breaking in his head as a preconception or accepted fact was shattered. Oh, wow. Now I will never be able to hear those words without thinking about that, Harry said as he stared into space and touched his head. He would later find out about the sun and moon being responsible for Sunday and Monday and Tuesday being associated with another Asgardian. Suddenly I wish I was drunk. Not too drunk, I hope. We still have some celebrating to do. Natasha purred in his ear. Harry suddenly felt better, though slightly distracted. There's not enough alcohol on the planet to keep me from that, he said as he lifted a hand and turned a portal to where Heimdall was waiting into being for the royal party. Then he focused on them. We'll be there for dinner, will that be okay? You'll be there 2 hours prior to dinner, young man. We have our gift to give and some things to discuss as well, Frigga said as she looked at Natasha and winked at her. Until then, enjoy your celebration. Then she hugged both Harry and Natasha and stepped through the portal. Then Odin, Thor and the guard Loki said their farewells and left. Hey Harry, Tony started. I have been contacted by someone who wants to meet with you. Are you aware that there is no record of any way to contact you other than through EPI and me? Apparently Fury refused to play messenger and passed them on to me. I was not aware. I'll have Hill set up a service for it. Harry nodded, still holding Natasha's hand. Since when is EPI and PI the same thing? Tony asked. Since PI consists of you, Bruce, Hank and me, Harry retorted. And me, Jarvis interjected. Of course, Jarvis, sorry. You're probably the one that does the most work for PI, since you're in charge of fabrication. Harry apologized. I've also taken over prioritizing installation of new distribution centers and sending that information on to EPI, who have taken over installations from Stark Industries. Jarvis added. At this point, all that Stark Industries does is deliver the WPTs, PMGs and ERDers to a pickup site. They have access to the portals and can arrange installations much quicker. It's also been helping with the reputation of EPI. Harry was amazed again, then he turned to Tony. How far are you with the inertial dampening? We have a promise to keep to Jarvis, and as soon as you're done with your self-imposed mastery qualifier, I'm giving you all of Hermione's research. I want to keep my promise. Would it be okay for me to have access too? Jarvis asked hopefully. Of course, Jarvis, we're talking about your future here. Harry agreed easily, but not before me, Tony quickly interjected. I've been working at all this for a long time now with that as my goal. Of course, Tony, I would not do that to you. You've kept up your part of the deal. Harry agreed. While Master Stark works at that first, I'll start working on a couple of ideas I have for the space program. Jarvis said. I've been looking at the current idea for inertial dampening and was able to extrapolate what I think will work for artificial gravity without needing to apply centrifugal force. Harry, if we don't leave now, I'm leaving and starting without you, Natasha whispered in his ear. He had started getting into his planning sessions again. Harry loved planning and dreaming of the possibilities of magic. He'd felt so stifled in his old world. Here he was able to dream and play. Natasha didn't want to take that away from him, but he had been teasing her all night and she was about ready to jump him where he stood. Harry noticed the danger signs and quickly yelled goodbye before apparating the both of them directly to the island and their bedroom. The first thing Harry noticed when they had landed was Natasha's shirt flying. The last thing he saw that night or morning was her sweat-drenched body in a near catatonic state of bliss, but with the biggest smile on her face. He thought he might look the same. The next day they slept late. Natasha sometimes joked that their exertions in the bedroom might negate the necessity for exercise in the mornings. Only that morning it felt like the truth. When they did get up, Natasha was the first to leave for the day. She had been working with EPI ever since its founding, which kept her quite busy and had a use for her many skills. Harry couldn't be happier for her. She had been training her own squad of deep cover operatives. They were being trained for long-term infiltration, using whatever magical assistance they might need. Natasha already had a couple of agents in the field, and she was all of their primary contact. She had all the tools she'd need to get updates and monitor their progress, along with magical monitoring, which only she, Harry, and Fury had access to. Harry had refused to set up another monitoring solution like they had used for Slash on the Hydra agents. Only people that knew they were being monitored were added to the latest version, with a remote-activated stasis port key, in case they got blindsided and Slash or kidnapped and wounded. They were also not permanently recorded, although there were cameras in Natasha's private office which were disconnected from the EPI network, for her own records and monitoring when she was not in the office. Another difference to this monitoring system was that Natasha could communicate with her people without the need for using visible devices. They did have jewelry that performed the same function, but nobody would think to take them since they were neither valuable nor flashy. Simple trinkets like beads on an armband or crystals on leather straps. With Natasha no longer following Harry around and his promise not to take any chances, they were working separately quite happily. With Harry spending most of his days at his lab in EPI, and only working at the workshop whenever he was working on anything potentially dangerous or secret. Harry was still working on his latest project, that of enchanting vodka, when Natasha appeared in his office. Tony looked up from his side of the always active mirror and greeted her before continuing his own work. She walked up to Harry and greeted him before saying, "Come on, Harry. Frigga will have our hides if we're late. Just a couple more minutes, I think I've got this," Harry said as he finished the spell work on a bottle filled with water. The enchantment would work on the magical liquor, but he didn't want to waste it when he was working, especially since he could just as easily drink water and test the effect. "There, I think I have it," Harry said as he poured a shot of the newly enchanted liquid into a shot glass. Then he held it out to Natasha. "Want to try it? It's only water, but the enchantment should work like fire whiskey." Natasha took the shot glass and looked over at Tony to see him watching. She downed the shot but left a bit on her tongue to breathe over. When she blew out, there was a light fog and what looked like ice crystals started raining down under where she blew for a couple of seconds. Natasha frowned. While the effect was good, the experience was somewhat marred by the fact that she only tasted water. Harry seemed to know what she was thinking. "Yeah, I know. But imagine that effect with an ice-cold shot of vodka." "I see what you're going for, but don't you think it's slightly derivative?" Tony asked from his side of the mirror. Harry smirked. "You've only seen half of it. I'll show you the rest when the time is right." He then walked around his table and smiled at his girl. "Thanks for coming for me." He took her arm and apparated them to their house. "No problem," Natasha said with a smirk. "I was able to arrange the day off tomorrow. But we'll need to consider assigning me a staff with a new clearance-level contract. I can't have my people out there with someone else watching their backs if I can't guarantee their secrets are kept." "How is your project faring?" Harry asked. "I've gotten a couple of people into starting positions. Proper infiltration takes months to years, which is why I can afford to take time off so scarcely. We'll need that new contract set up soon, so that I can delegate some of my responsibilities," Natasha told him. "Does Hill know what to look out for?" Harry asked as he donned the formal wear he had received from Frigga yesterday. "Yes, she has already set up a shortlist for me. I just need to take the time once you've done your part to conduct the interviews." Natasha smirked as she got dressed herself, flashing him a couple of times in poses she knew drove him wild. Harry, who was very aware of her attempts to distract him, focused his acclumancy for full emotional control. It worked well enough that he could tell when she noticed her efforts were being resisted. She abandoned subtlety at that point and blew him a kiss. "Are you going to need anything for these interviews?" Harry asked as he finished his ensemble with a pair of thick leather boots. He'd have to look into tanning more dragon leather. It wasn't like he had to worry about where, but he didn't have much variety. I'll be using some of EPI's stock of Veritaserum, but they will have the option to take it. If they refuse, they will still have an opportunity to be hired, but not work directly with sensitive information. Natasha confirmed, though with Hill in charge, I doubt that will be an issue. Sounds like you've got this all planned except for the contracts. Why am I only hearing about this now? He said as he turned around to find Natasha dressed and waiting for him. How are you always dressed faster than me? Trade secret. Natasha smirked. You'd have to earn that knowledge. Harry's occlumency failed, but only because he really wanted it to. Her suggestive look suddenly had all the intended effect, and he smiled as he summoned her to him and allowed her momentum to carry them onto the nearby bed. Oh, I'm sure I could do that. Natasha laughed as he played along for a bit but then stopped him. If we don't leave now, I'm telling Frigga it's your fault we're late. Harry smirked at her. And you think she'll believe you over me? Natasha lifted an eyebrow and smirked back, the word of the future mother of her grandchildren. Harry's smirk faded. Damn, okay fine, he said, but just for the record you did start this. You could have resisted me, Natasha countered. Who'd want to? Harry asked rhetorically. He got up and pulled her off the bed before kissing her again. Then he activated the portkey to Asgard. The party was a raucous one. People congratulated Harry and drank to his health. Some of them came to congratulate them on the engagement again. All in all, the party was a standard affair, though there were a few more dishes from Earth, including a giant 4-layer cake which Harry had to admit tasted better than any he had ever baked. He suspected Frigga had added something from one of the other realms. This led him to a discussion with her about obtaining spices and herbs from the other realms. He had provided so much from his home, but never considered the possibilities of the other realms, besides potions ingredients. Frigga promised to have a package put together for him by his next visit. Harry told her that she could come visit on the island as well, and that he'd have the royal gift situated with the protections in the next week or so. Odin had a bit of a discussion with him about producing magical liquor for Asgard. Harry told him of a couple of plans they had and asked much the same question he had of Frigga. For some of what they planned, he'd need a few ingredients from Asgard. Odin listened to his plan and smiled. It seems like you might have been misjudged in people's estimates of your divine gifts, he started, but noted Natasha shaking her head behind Harry, or you may have another divine calling. You certainly know your way around making fine alcohol and food too, perhaps something more all-encompassing. The god of gluttony, Loki offered up from his position beside Frigga. Frigga slapped his arm. Stop that. Then she looked at Harry with a kind smile. If anything, his divine attribute is generosity. Natasha seemed to consider it before nodding. I think that if Harry were divine, that would definitely be one of his defining attributes. Indeed. What else would encompass all his virtues and deeds better than that? Thor exclaimed, taking another sip of his ale. Please people, Harry said as he desperately tried to change the subject. Why are we discussing something that doesn't matter? I am not of the Aesir, so I don't have a divine calling. I am a simple magic user with a love of helping people. Frigga smiled warmly at him. You may not be an Aesir by birth, but you have been blessed by Asgard and you are as divine as any of us here. Did you not know this? She asked. Surely you did not believe we were just speculating for entertainment. Harry was dumbstruck, so Natasha asked for him as she lay a hand on his knee to offer him support. What would this divinity entail? Odin decided to handle this one. There is much speculation about the power of Asgard and its origins. But for all the theories, I have found only one possibility that rings true after all my years. The power does not reside in the land as much as it does in its people. Their faith in its unbending will and its divine blessings have given her those powers. Asgard is and always has been the power of faith and those who Asgard as a people chooses to believe in. Harry frowned after hearing this. You mean to tell me you have divine power because people believe you do? Odin sat back and tried to explain. It has to do with the nature of the universe. Ask yourself, if there was nobody to observe the universe, would it exist? Would it even matter then? The answer lay in the study of existence and its purpose. The simple answer is no. Without anyone to observe it, the universe would not exist. That is the reason for the creation of immortal souls. Even in death, the dead perform the function of validating and causing existence to continue, even if all life were to be snuffed out. But that is not what we are discussing. The power of faith is well documented, even on Midgard. Miracles that occur because of the power of faith, no matter the religion. People find comfort and purpose in their beliefs, so their combined will and faith causes those things to happen. On Asgard, we know this as well, but we have chosen what we wish to believe to bring it into existence. Odin finished. Harry frowned. So Valhalla and Hell, all exist. I have seen both with my own eyes. It is one of the reasons why nobody is allowed on Niflheim. It is the residence of hell where those who do not die as heroes go. Odin said somberly. Natasha looked shocked and asked, so your people either die as heroes or they go to an existence of endless pain? You are thinking of the dimensions of fire ruled by demons, yes? Frigga asked. At Natasha's nod she continued, you are thinking of a different hell. The hell of our people is not only a place to torture spirits for eternally. It is also the place where those who lived peaceful lives can rest. It is a place where those who pass on get what they deserve for how they lived their lives. Loki spoke up. The reason why most strive for Valhalla is because it is a guarantee of what awaits us after death, rather than the uncertainty of whether our lives were good enough to ensure a peaceful afterlife. This is a lot to take in, Harry said, with Natasha agreeing internally. I've never been one for religious discussion and research, but I think I'll have to look into this if there's a chance it might affect my life. Odin smiled at him. Once again you show your wisdom, but I have an interesting possibility to raise to you before we continue with the feast. Yes, Harry asked with a hint of suspicion and apprehension in his voice. What if I told you that magic, specifically yours, is a form of connection to the very power of creation and existence? Furthermore, what if I told you the reason you are so powerful is because of all the faith your people had in you, before you even knew your own destiny? The same counts for your enemy. The reason he could not die was because his followers started believing he could not die. That is my theory anyway, with the little information you gave me. Odin said. To say Harry's mind was blown would be an understatement. If Odin was right, it had so many implications. It would explain why he had suddenly become so powerful after the world saw him saving New York with the Avengers, and why his island became so magical so suddenly when he started bringing sentient magical creatures to it. He had always believed that the concentration of magic in an area and the amount of power invested would eventually lead to the land itself becoming magical. He didn't consider that the inhabitants' very hopes and beliefs could be responsible for infusing the land with so much potential and attributing the land and its protection and power to him. He realized that he himself had put quite a bit of faith into what he was doing, what he was trying to achieve. He had essentially created a miniature Asgard all without trying to. Oh no, he muttered to himself as realization struck. Natasha heard anyway. What? She asked. Harry looked up at her. The nymphs, what about them? Natasha asked again. They practically worship me already. They were joking about making a sacrifice to me as their patron when we were confronting that kid from Xavier's Institute. Harry whined. At least I hope they were joking. Loki's smile had been growing and growing until he couldn't contain his laughter anymore. This is priceless, he exclaimed through his laughter. What is it? Frigga asked. Loki's laughter was contagious and she was smiling already. Loki pulled himself together with some effort and explained. Harry has a grove of forest nymphs on New Atlantis, which his people rescued from being hunted down and sold into slavery. They have apparently been worshipping Harry as their patron. Loki looked like he was going to lose the battle against laughter again. Don't you see, Mother? Harry is being worshipped as a god and king by creatures who have been a source of lust and sexual desire for generations. They are the very incarnations of the sexual. The word nymph has become synonymous with it. Add to that the book he brought from his home world and how quickly the rumors of his prowess have been spreading. At this Loki did lose the fight and broke down in laughter again. Frigga seemed to be struggling with her own mirth. Odin chuckled softly while Thor had outright burst out in laughter. It seems you've been set down a specific path, my son. Odin said, still with a smile on his face. But that wasn't my intention. Harry whined as Natasha put an arm around his shoulders. At least you can control yourself completely around their allure. Natasha said to him, imagine you hadn't been able to when you realized they had all bonded to you. They'd all be pregnant by now. Harry heard it coming but had been unable to stop her. He buried his face in his hands as he heard Frigga's intake of breath. You just couldn't resist, could you? He muttered. Though he couldn't see it, he knew Natasha had an impish smile on her lips. What did I just hear? Frigga asked dangerously. Loki, on the other hand, had stopped laughing suddenly. I concede victory to you, Harry, for even I, Loki the trickster, could not trick you as well as you have tricked yourself. Harry just groaned. It was a hollow victory. Why does the universe conspire to make my life more difficult at every opportunity? You will not ignore me, Harry, Frigga demanded. What does this mean? You are bonded to a grove of nymphs. Harry sighed and looked up with resignation. Actually, considering what I know now, they are more likely bonded to the land, which is bonded to me in turn. Also, they are not a grove but the grove. As far as I can tell, they are the last of their kind. We have heard rumors but have been unable to find proof that there are more of them hidden on one of the other realms. That does not matter, Harry. You have all these connections and have not had your mother meet your new consorts yet. Frigga said with disappointment in her voice. Thor and Loki winced as Harry experienced for the first time the feeling of having disappointed a devoted mother figure. You will remedy this at once. Harry winced, but Natasha came to his rescue. You realize that they are forest nymphs, right? They cannot leave the place where their trees are planted, so they cannot come here. She explained, as for them being Harry's consorts, we have as of yet not tasted their fruit, as they would put it. Frigga's eyes narrowed. I know some things of the nymphs. You are not depriving them of any of their needs, are you? As far as I know, they are perfectly happy. As long as they get to spend some time around me every now and then, they are quite content. Harry assured her. And you can meet them when you come to the island again. You'd have met them anyway after I set up your gift. Then you will do so tomorrow and I will come and meet them. Frigga stated, brooking no argument as she turned to her husband and whispered something in his ear. Harry did not like the smirk on Odin's face. Harry's occlumency had started filing these kinds of happenings in a reasonably new category he referred to as family drama. While he loved these people, they were sometimes quite exasperating. Fine. Harry groused and hoped they were finished with this subject. He did not miss the twinkle in Loki's eye, one of mischief. But it was there most of the time these days, so he just let it go and made a mental note to be on the lookout for something unexpected. The rest of the party was fun and full of laughs and stories being told by family and friends. Harry enjoyed it and made a mental note to try and spend a bit more time away from the office. After all, what good was living if there was no enjoyment in it? That evening they spent the night in Harry's rooms and had breakfast with the family, before leaving for the island, where they spent their morning alone and uninterrupted. Just before lunch, Harry set to work on his latest project. Part of it had been on his mind for a while now, but because of his latest gift, he was forced to put it into action immediately instead of somewhere along the line. So it was that he went to one of the greenhouses, a bit away from the others, and cast a Fidelius on it. Then he started adding embellishments and decorations in gold, which he had gone to fetch from his vault. It was all golden leaves and vines, with fruit of all sorts that were enchanted to change color every so often, going through the whole spectrum. He then went inside and dug out a large, deep opening, transporting the soil outside for later use. Then he started working over the remaining soil and adding a lot of fertilizer. He wanted this to be his most fertile piece of land, so he worked the dragon dung in deep, before compacting everything down again to level the ground, even if it was underground, and make it stable to walk on. Then he returned to the house, to get something to drink and eat, as Natasha had decided she wanted to be surprised. She had long since noticed he loved surprising people, and would sometimes let him go at something alone so he could impress her with his efforts. When lunch was over, he kissed her goodbye and apparated to the nymph enclosure. Good afternoon, ladies, Harry said as he walked in. Hope I'm not interrupting something. Zira was first to him and gave him a big hug, which he returned with good humor. Once they had learned of the custom, Harry had become the victim recipient of at least 2 from each of them at every meeting. So it was that Harry stood there hugging every one of them. Even a very young one that looked like a young girl's. She was apparently as old as she looked, at around 5 or 6 years old. She had autumn red/orange hair and very pale green eyes. Her name was Samantha, and she was quite adorable when she smiled. She had always stayed behind someone when they had guests and was the quiet type. Many times she had refused to come out of her tree even. Apparently she had lived in fear her whole life, but she was slowly coming around. The first time she had hugged Harry, she had refused to let go, and he had had to carry her around with him as he worked on the enclosure, adding space and redirecting water flow as directed by Zira. Since then she always had a smile for him and inevitably ended up climbing on his back so that he could carry her around. This time was no exception. She had at least waited until the nymphs had stopped greeting him before jumping on him. Harry smiled and shifted her to be more comfortable for him. Okay then, hello to you too. He smiled at her before turning to Zira. I have not just come to visit, I have a proposition for you and your people. What can we do for you, Lord Harry? Zira asked with a smile of her own. She really liked Harry's effect on the little Samantha. She had always been so shy and slow to trust. She still didn't speak much, but she bloomed like a flower when Harry came to visit. I have come to bring you good news and request a favor. First, I have set up a greenhouse for you and your sisters, right by the other greenhouses. As such, you will have easy access to the pool and the bar should you feel like it. Harry said, That is wonderful, Zira exclaimed. There was an excited muttering from the nymphs as well, and all of them wore happy smiles. The favor I ask is that you take care of and protect a very special new addition to the island, which will reside with you in the greenhouse. Harry said, Of course we'll do it. We'd love to care for any new residents on the island. Zira promised. What is it that we will be responsible for? Harry smiled impishly. That is a surprise. We will also be receiving a few guests, which is when I will present you with the new resident. As you wish. Zira said. Harry nodded and slapped his hands together. Okay, so I'll be moving your trees. As we've been through this process before, you should know what to do. All of you into your trees and don't come out until I tell you it's safe, he instructed. Samantha slid off his back and skipped over to her tree, where she disappeared into the sapling. Harry canceled the magics of the room as he waited for them all to disappear, plunging the cave into darkness. Then he turned a portal into being above the grove, allowing the light in again. Above him he could see the domed glass roof of the greenhouse. Then he lifted his arms, and unlike before when he had transported the grove tree by tree, he lifted the very ground beneath the trees and hoisted the entire grove through the giant portal. It took quite a bit of power, but Harry barely felt his reserves dipping as he lifted the grove through the portal. He quickly transported himself to the greenhouse, while maintaining his hold, and then closed the portal once he could see he had the trees and ground lifted above it. Then he slowly set it down. He had not known that he had cleared out a bit too much earth, so he quickly had to take hold again as the loose earth started falling into the crevice. Harry then made a full circle, walking around the grove and transporting the soil back into the opening around the grove. When it was nicely compacted again and he had walked through the grove twice, he called on Zira again. Slowly she exited her tree and looked around. "You moved us all at once," she exclaimed. "You truly are a worthy lord and a wonderful man." She turned around and called the other nymphs. They were as shocked as Zira and looked through the greenhouse and at its decorations in wonder. Some of them walked over to some of the enchanted fruit decorations and touched them and giggled when they felt Harry's power in them. As they explored the area, Harry started activating the little streams and making sure they were still running as they should. "Everything seems to be in order here," Harry said as he exited the grove and walked over to Zira as Samantha ran up to him and latched onto his leg. He smiled and lifted her onto his back again. "How is everything? Are you experiencing any diminished connection to the island? Is there anything you'll need here?" Zira smiled at him. "You worry too much. Everything feels as it had. The connection may even be a bit stronger here since we are closer to the source. I'm glad. Let me show you how to get back into the greenhouse and then I'll go fetch our guests," Harry said. He led them all outside and then told them the secret. As he went to leave, he had to put Samantha in Zira's arms to keep her from trying to climb on him again, and then he apparated home. "Honey, I'm home," Harry said as he walked in. "It's about time," came the unexpected voice of Frigga from his living room, where she was apparently drinking tea with Natasha. While she was drinking tea, Natasha was drinking coffee. "I have been waiting for an hour. Didn't I say I'd come fetch you?" Harry asked. "You most certainly did not, and I was not taking any chances, so I took the portkey. I suspect Odin would like to join us as well, so if you would please call him on the mirror." It was a short while later that Harry, Natasha, Frigga, Odin, Thor, and Loki walked to the greenhouses. Harry could have transported them, but he felt that their coming here on foot the first time somehow meant something. It helped that it added to the suspense even just a little bit. When they arrived, Harry gave them all the secret and presented the greenhouse. "May I present the nymph house?" he said as he spread his arms wide and looked at the greenhouse for the first time without having something to do to it in hours. "You have modified it to accentuate its appeal," Odin said. "You have quite the gift for artistic decoration. Is there nothing that you cannot do?" Harry scratched the back of his head. "Actually, I do have a love for some forms of art, and I must admit to having copied heavily from some of the works I have seen in the past. I am no artist." "Oh, that's good," Loki breathed out with relief. When everyone looked at him, he shrugged. "It is good to know he's not good at everything he attempts." Thor chuckled. Odin soon followed. Frigga was not so patient. "Where are these nymphs?" she asked excitedly. Harry rolled his eyes and led them to the door, where he knocked and said, "Zira, I have brought the guests." Zira opened the door from her side and bowed to the guested before stepping aside and letting them in. "Good afternoon. My name is Zira, and I am the leader of the nymphs of New Atlantis. Welcome to our grove." Frigga walked in and inspected the nymph with a critical eye, then turned to Harry. Her eyes seemed to be following something between them and into the back of the rest of the greenhouse where the grove was located. "Interesting," she muttered before smiling at Zira. "Hello, Zira. My name is Frigga of Asgard. This is my husband Odin, and those are my other two sons Thor and Loki, who I believe you have met before." Zira seemed to pale before going down on one knee and bowing her head. "Queen Mother, excuse my manners. I did not know who our guests would be." "I'll have none of that. I am not queen here. That honor will one day belong to our lady Natasha," Frigga said as she helped the nymph to her feet and indicating Natasha. "Come, show me your home and let me meet your people. Maybe you can tell me about this connection I feel between you and my youngest." And so a blushing Zira led the Queen of Asgard into the grove with not so much as a backward glance as she started telling Frigga of her lord and all he has done for them. At some point, Samantha, shy around the strangers, ran up behind Harry and hid behind him while holding onto his hand. Harry looked down and smiled at her. "Come meet my family," he said to her as he picked her up and held her on his hip. She hid her face in his shoulder and said nothing. But she'd look up with a shy smile when he started introducing her. "This is Odin and the father of our family. Father, this is Samantha, the youngest of the Grove," he said, turning so that Odin could see her and she could greet him. Odin smiled at her and held out a hand to her. She shyly took it and shook it as Odin said, "It is a pleasure to meet one of my son's people, and you are such a pretty little thing," he said as he tickled her lightly, eliciting a giggle from her. "Why don't you show me to where Frigga has disappeared off to, eh?" he asked her. She turned to Harry, who nodded at her. "Go on, Odin will not hurt you, I trust everyone here," he said as he put her down. She took one of Odin's fingers and started leading him into the grove. "You must be weary that mother does not see how you hold that little girl. With her red hair and green eyes, she looks almost like she could be Natasha's daughter," Thor warned. "Indeed. The way you held her and the way she holds on to you makes for a strong impression. You looked like a doting father." Loki agreed. "She's just a shy little girl who has trouble trusting people. She's not had an easy life." Harry said, "That will only endear her to Mother more easily." Thor said, "From the look on Mother's face, there is more going on here than meets the eye." With that, they followed behind Odin and the little girl until they came to the clearing at the center of the grove, where Frigga had found a thick root on one of the trees to sit on like a bench. Arranged in front of her were the nymphs, all sitting on the ground and introducing themselves to her. Samantha let go of Odin's finger and joined them on the ground, not wanting to be left out. When time came for her to introduce herself, she ducked her head, not having thought that far ahead. "Her name is Samantha. She is a quiet one. I have heard her say no more than 3 words in the last couple of weeks, and 2 of them were Harry," Zira said with a smile. "Come here, child, and let me see you," Frigga asked with a kind smile. Samantha, however, was suddenly very shy and scurried back to Harry, where she hid behind him. Shaking his head, he turned around and picked her up before going to sit next to the queen with Samantha on his lap. "Samantha, this is Frigga, my mother. She is very nice and came all this way just to meet you in the grove," Harry said, introducing her. Samantha did not say anything but lifted her head slightly to smile a shy smile at Frigga, and it was worth the trip just to see that pretty smile. Frigga assured her with her own smile she had not missed how Harry had handled the child. He would make a good father, indeed. Judging from the girl's burgeoning connection to him, it was entirely possible that she had already assigned that role to him in her mind. Frigga relished at the idea and decided that having an adopted nymph granddaughter wasn't so bad. She reached out and tentatively took the child from Harry. At first she stiffened, but Frigga's gentle presence soon soothed her as she sat on the queen's lap and started drifting off. "We are here today to see a gift which my son received." "Taken care of," Frigga spoke quietly to the grove. "It was the anniversary of my birth 2 days ago, and it is customary to give gifts on one's birthday, and my family gave me something quite special," Harry said. When he saw looks of panic, he quickly assured them, "But it is only customary if you knew about it. Since you did not, you don't need to worry about gifts." "But my lord," Zira started. "No buts. If you really want to give me a gift, promise me you'll look after this," Harry said as he pulled a small box out of his pocket. He held it out in front of Zira and opened the box. Inside was what looked like a seed of some sort. "This is a seed from one of the apples of Idun, otherwise known as a golden apple,"